Hey family, welcome back to my video. Today we will see, what if Harry Potter fallen in love with Fleur? Before we start, here is my official Patreon. Please join it because there are many stuffs that I can't share here because of community guidelines. But on my Patreon page, you will get adult Harry stories, Naruto, and Deca 2. Also the quick access for other parts of my story which might take time on YouTube. Also there are many stuffs you will get here. Please consider joining my Patreon. Link in the description. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the original author of this story for granting us permission to use it in our YouTube video. Your generosity is greatly appreciated. The author's creation and the original story's link in the descriptions. Please do check that first. Now enjoy the video. For as long as Harry could remember, there had always been a voice whispering advice in the back of his head. Since he was a child running away from Dudley and his gang, the voice with its silky, smooth voice was always whispering advice. Run that way. Imagine being on the roof. Curl into a ball and protect your chest. When he had asked his teachers in primary school if he should have a voice giving him advice living inside his head, they had waved it off saying that was called a conscience. Well, if everyone had one, then Harry had the best one, as once he got to the magical world, it really took things to the next level in terms of helping him. Stuck on an essay? The voice would give him another couple of inches worth of material. Going to stop Snape from stealing the Philosopher's Stone, the voice provided ignored proof that Snape was not that type of person. Fighting a basilisk, the voice was firmly against the act and begged Harry to simply let the Weasley girl die and make new friends, preferably with someone who has a better work ethic and was less jealous. This was also the same voice that had all but demanded that Harry get revenge for Hermione not even a day or so before the fight with the giant killer snake. An attack on our associates is a direct attack on us. Such unjust actions shall be met with an equal display of force. But I'm like 12 and don't know how to display an equal amount of force or whatever, thought Harry. Maybe a little more time studying and a little less time spent slacking, and we would be further along in our climb to being the mightiest wizard of this generation. Upon killing the massive snake and spending the plenty of nights in the hospital wing, the voice ended its silent treatment. I understand that you are a Gryffindor through and through, Harry, but that does not mean you have to act in a manner that shows that you're the most Gryffindor of them, of all Gryffindors. Maybe do not stab a snake with the deadliest venom ever in the mouth next time. I have grown rather fond of you and living. All throughout his third year, the voice demanded that he master the Patronus charm. But Harry found the charm either too taxing or was unable to generate the happy memory needed to cast it. Am I not enough for you, Harry? Are we not friends enough for that feeling to let you cast the magic? As much as Harry wished that were the case, it never was enough. But he tried and tried, just as the voice continued to ask, but he never really managed to gain enough mastery of the charm for the voice. That was until the day he needed to. And there were the Dementors. They were emerging out of the darkness from every direction, gliding around the edges of the lake. They were moving away from where Harry stood to the opposite bank. He would not have to get near them. Harry began to run. He had no thought in his head except his father. Come on, my dear Harry. You know the truth. It had to be him. Harry was certain of it. And if it was his father, he had to know how to find out. The lake was coming nearer and nearer, but there was no sign of anybody. On the opposite bank, he could see tiny glimmers of silver, his own attempts at a Patronus from the past. Come on, Harry. You are far more powerful than you are giving yourself credit for. You have the potential to be one of the greatest wizards to ever walk the planet. There was a bush at the very edge of the water. Harry threw himself behind it, peering desperately through the leaves. On the opposite bank, the glimmers of silver were suddenly extinguished. A terrified excitement shot through him. Any moment now? Come on, he muttered, staring about. Where are you? Dad, come on. Harry, there is nobody coming to help you. It is just you and I here. But no one came. Harry raised his head to look at the circle of Dementors across the lake. One of them was lowering its hood. It was time for the rescuer to appear, but no one was coming to help this time. And then it hit him. The voice was correct, as it always seemed to be. He had not seen his father. He had seen himself. How do I do it? How do I cast the spell? Whispered Harry to himself. Provide the power. I will guide you. Lean into me, Harry. I will not allow you to fail. I will not allow you to die. I will not accept anything but greatness from us. Harry nodded as an out-of-body experience started as he stood up from behind the bush, and with an air of confidence, he pulled out his wand. Expecto Patronum, yelled Harry in a sort of dual voice. The voice in his head joined him. Instead of the silvery mist that he was used to, there was a big bright ball of light that exploded out of the end of his wand, and Harry gasped as the ball of light slowly morphed into a brilliant, impressively big stag that stormed the mass of Dementors and drove them away. You were right in a manner after all, Harry. Your father was known as a prideful stag that went by prongs as seen on the map. How do you know that? Asked Harry. The voice never replied, and Harry became distracted by Hermione tugging him along, his question lost in the whirlwind of events unfolding before him. In fact, Harry didn't think of the question again. The voice had been with him as long as he could remember, perhaps since he was a baby. The voice had seen things that he could not remember. He was certain of it. What's that? Snarled Vernon, staring at the envelope Harry was still clutching in his hand. If it's another form for me to sign, you've got another dash. It's not, said Harry cheerfully. It's a letter from my godfather. Godfather? Sputtered Uncle Vernon. You haven't got a godfather. Repeat after me, Harry. Yes, I have, said Harry brightly. He was my mom and dad's best friend. He's a convicted murderer, but he's broken out of wizard prison and he's on the run. He likes to keep in touch with me, though. Keep 368 up with my news, check if I'm happy. And grinning broadly at the look of horror on Uncle Vernon's face, Harry set off toward the station exit, Hedwig rattling along in front of him, for what looked like a much better summer than the last. That lasted about 2 days, the weekend to be exact. The voice woke him up bright and early on Monday morning. You have rested enough, child. I believe that it is best that you start to take things more seriously, as I have been urging you to. Harry opened his eyes with a groan, his blurry vision filled with the ceiling, the soft pink hue of the morning sky spraying across the ceiling, clashing with the white paint. Is it not a little early to be starting? Thought Harry. Laziness is the enemy of success, child. Harry couldn't argue with that logic, mostly because he felt like arguing that being lazy would not fly with the voice. The voice had never really been rude or mean to him, had never caused him pain or anything like that. But it had been stern with him, always pushing for him to be better, to work harder. The Patronus episode showed him that the voice clearly had his best interest at heart, or voice box. What should I be learning? Asked Harry. We do not have access to casting magic in this muggle neighborhood, but that does not mean we cannot learn magic. You are quite the wizard when it comes to the practical side of magic, but it is time for you to put in the work to become more balanced. Do you know what makes people like Dumbledore and the Dark Lord stand out? Not how many spells they know, not the power they wield, but the fact that they are and were so heavily in tune with magic. You need to increase your understanding of magical theory. Isn't theory a bit more boring? How helpful can it be? Questioned Harry. Understanding the theory behind magic is crucial for wizards for several reasons, my young friend. First is efficiency and mastery. Knowing the theory allows wizards to perform spells more efficiently and effectively. You have to understand the mechanics and principles behind each spell, enabling you to be able to manipulate the magical energy of each spell with greater precision. Second is innovation and adaptation. A deep understanding of magical theory empowers wizards to innovate and adapt spells for various situations. This would allow you to modify spells or create new ones by applying theoretical knowledge creatively. When faced with magical challenges or anomalies, wizards with theoretical knowledge can analyze the situation and devise appropriate solutions. This ability is essential for overcoming obstacles that may not have straightforward answers. Third S, to prevent mistakes. Without understanding the theory, casting spells can be risky. Wizards might inadvertently cause magical backlash or unintended consequences. Knowledge of magical theory helps mitigate these risks by ensuring proper control and application of magical forces. Overall, theoretical understanding enhances a wizard's proficiency, creativity, and ethical responsibility in using magic, making it a cornerstone of their magical education and practice. Also, because I said so, Harry could not argue with the last part. Do you know what the difference between a spell, charm, and curse are? Harry bit his lip. That was a rather good question. What was the difference between the three? Spells are more general branches of magic, such transfiguration and alchemy, less rigid guidelines for the magic being cast, but also require more focus and intent required. You need to be able to envision the outcome to get it to work. Charms are about casting your internal desires and influence outwards. Think about the stunning charm Stupefy or Protego, the shield charm. The stunning charm requires you to have the desire to knock out the other person, while the shield charm requires your desire to not get hurt to be broadcasted outwards. Curses are purely offensive magic. They hold no real defensive properties. You will find the cutting curse, the tripping curse, the blasting curse all do one thing, and one thing only. Harry soaked in all the information that the voice was giving him. It had clearly been paying attention in class far more than he had been himself. Okay, so magical theory it is. Where do I begin with that? Asked Harry. We need to get a Diagon Alley and get a book about the art of dueling, preferably something from between 1910 to 1955. You'll find a lot of information about Dumbledore's style of dueling in those sections. Why Dumbledore? Dumbledore, for all his flaws, is one of the most powerful wizards to ever walk this planet. There is no one that you should want to emulate in a fight more. Not even Lord Voldemort. You should banish the very idea of ever fighting like him from your mind, child. You do not wish to be so limited in your attack. Dark magic can be powerful. The emotion and intent required to even cast the spells demands that it be powerful. However, dark magic is so easily sensed, and the foul magic leaves a metaphorical stain on your person. For every dark cutting curse, the normal cutting curse would accomplish the same thing with a slight overpowering of the spell. Dark magic limits the mind. You don't want to feel like the only option is attack. You want to defend, misdirect, retreat. Offensive magic is great, but it is not the end all be all. Sometimes it is better to take a simple step to the side of the mountain rather than to try and blast through it. Are you certain? Think about how dumb dark magic can be. You are famous for surviving the killing curse. Yet if the Dark Lord had simply dropped you out of a window, there would have been no rebounding of the spell, and he never would have fallen the first time. I never thought about it. All I've ever learned about dark magic in school is that it is powerful and dangerous magic. Magic itself is a powerful thing. It's one of the things that make being a witch or wizard so valuable. Your family dislikes and fears you because they do not understand the fact that if you really wish to, you could get rid of them with but a whispered word. You would never do that because it's wrong, but that doesn't matter to them. You are the same thing as those muggles with the magnified glass burning ants alive from when you were younger. They do not understand why you do or do not lay waste to them. They just understand that you can. As the days passed, Harry became aware of how much about magic he didn't know about. The voice helped him slowly start to understand things such as wand motions, how curses were mostly filled with slashes, spells were mostly jabs or points, charms were some variation of swish, flicks, or twists. Harry found himself taking notes on just about everything the voice was telling him. It seemed to have another otherworldly understanding of magic. It was almost as if having a personal Dumbledore inside of his head, providing him notes about magical theory. So, how do I enchant things? You are not ready for that, if you say so, but I still want to take notes on it. You are finally getting what people such as myself have always felt. There is always something more to learn. I don't know about wanting to always learn more, but I should know more than nothing about most topics. I agree. You are from a very detailed and historical house. Not some magical royalty nonsense. This is not a children's book. But your family has been around for dozens of generations, several hundred years at the least. Am I the last of them? The last Potter? I do not know. You are the only Potter that I've heard about in recent times. The last ones before you would be your parents. You do have several relatives from the Black family still around. Your godfather is a not-so-distant cousin of yours, as is Draco Malfoy for the matter, but the blonde brat is not worth associating with. Petunia looked at Harry through the small gap she had created by opening the door. The messy-haired nephew of hers was scribbling down something without ever reading or saying anything. Was he writing a book? Was he even capable of something like that? He was turning 14 years old soon, but she never took him to be all that bright. He seemed a bit unfocused, but she hadn't seen him say anything in several days. Yet he always seemed to be deep in thought. It was starting to get concerning. She was not delusional. She knew that they had never treated him all that well. But they had also thought that they would be able to bully the magic out of him. that had failed, and now he was clearly on the way to being a full-fledged wizard like his parents before him. Would he take kindly to the manner in which they had treated him? Probably not, but maybe she could change that with a simple kindness? She knocked on the door, and she felt a spike of guilt at seeing the small boy flinch from the sound of her knuckle tapping on the wood of the door. "Hey, I know that summer break has just started, but did you want to go somewhere else? You don't have to stay coped up inside of the house or your room," she said softly. Harry opened his mouth before he closed it, his brows scrunched together as if he was trying to listen to something far away. Was that a wizard ability? Super hearing? Petunia wasn't sure about that. Lily had never been all that attentive when they were kids. "Can I spend the rest of the break in Diagon Alley again?" asked Harry after a moment, his voice wavering and timid as if he was asking for his friend and not himself. "Sure, if that's what you want," said Petunia as she realized that her nephew would rather pay to live in a hotel than live with them for free for the entire summer. And if she wanted to be shown any kindness in the future, she should probably allow that to happen, especially if he was continued to be this weird. That was all it took to make her nephew smile as she helped him pack his stuff up and took him down to the Leaky Cauldron, where he booked a room for the rest of the summer. Harry lay flat on his back, breathing hard as though he had been running. He had awoken from a vivid dream with his hands pressed over his face. The old scar on his forehead, which was shaped like a bolt of lightning, was burning beneath his fingers as though someone had just pressed a white-hot wire to his skin. He sat up, one hand still on his scar, the other reaching out in the darkness for his glasses, which were on the bedside table. He put them on, and the bedroom around him came in a clearer focus. He was still inside the room that he was renting. "You had a vision, it seems, something that is very problematic." "I saw a wormtail, and I think that was Voldemort." "You might have, but I would tell you that it's hard to say. That weird mutated baby thing is not what he looked like back when he was roaming around the magical world." "What should I do?" "You should be prepared, Harry. To quote the Muggles, it's better to have a loaded gun than to need one." Harry nodded. He had heard his uncle say something similar plenty of times. Despite how much Harry was not a fan of the man, his uncle was pretty good at being prepared for things in his mundane day-to-day life. "I think it is time for us to take things up another level in terms of your understanding magic. Harry, grab your wand." "Am I going to cast a spell?" "I don't want to get in trouble." "That doesn't apply to magical locations, Harry. If that were the case, every pure blood in the world would be expelled immediately. The trace only really is to make sure Muggleborns aren't performing magic in front of their Muggle neighbors. That seems unfair. You will find that much of life is unfair." "Okay, so what am I doing?" "I want you to think about casting the Lumos charm." Harry did as he was told and thought about casting the charm, careful to make the right wand motions as he did everything that he normally would have done without actually saying the words. However, this time was different. Harry, after spending so much time studying the theory side of magic, could feel the manner in which the magic swirled around inside of his body, could feel it tingle up his arm and flow into his wand, building up to casting the spell that he was thinking about. He nearly dropped his wand in surprise when the tip of his wand started to give off a low dim light. Limited and not as bright as when he said the words, but it was still the charm being cast just by his intent, his wand motions, and the feeling of magic. "You are finally starting to get it, child. It is not enough to know the spell. It is not enough to simply say the words. Magic is about intent, discipline, and guiding the power to fit your desires." You knew everything about the charm, and this time when you mere thought about it, it nearly came to be true. This is what understanding magic can help you accomplish. Harry allowed the flow of magic to dribble out, and the tip of his wand returned to normal. No light coming off the wood. He felt a bubble of excitement flood through his body as he realized that he had cast magic without any words. There was a tap at the window, and Harry saw that an owl was there, flapping its wings impatiently as it waited for him to open the window. Upon doing so, the owl hopped onto the desk and presented its leg, showing the letter that was attached to it. "Is the letter from your godfather?" Harry nodded and opened the letter, finding the letter to be rather short and to the point, much to his disappointment. "Harry, I have just arrived at my safe house outside of England. I wish that I could tell you where I am, but it's not safe at this time. Just know that I am safe where I am and will return to the island before you return back to Hogwarts. I will reach out to you every 2 weeks. Do not try to find me. Keep your head down. The winds are shifting, and the magical world is woefully unprepared for the storm that is coming. I want you to try your best to improve this upcoming year. It may feel unfair that people are asking for you to grow up faster than kids your age, but you have to be ready. Be in touch soon. Love, Sirius, aka Snuffles. Harry reread the letter twice more, but he couldn't make heads or tails of what was going to happen to the magical world. Tell him about your dream in a vague manner. Tell him that you saw Wormtail helping someone that he called his master. Are you sure? Yes. Sirius will care about that dream more than anyone else due to what Peter did to him and your family. But also, Sirius is still a black. He knows more about magic than just about anyone else that you might know. Really? He doesn't seem all that put together. He just spent 12 years being tortured by Dementors, having all of his happiness sucked from his body day after day. He's remarkably well adjusted for someone who has suffered in the manner that he has. Harry hadn't thought about that aspect of Sirius. Hagrid made it seem like it was the worst place on the planet. Perhaps he really wasn't giving Sirius enough credit for surviving as long as he did and coming out as mentally stable as he was. Harry scribbled a brief description of his dream, telling Sirius that he was spending the summer in the same place he spent the previous summer, as well as informing him that he planned on taking his education on magic much more serious. No pun intended, going forward, and was already making strides to do so. The owl that had delivered the letter from Sirius was the same owl that proudly allowed Harry to tie the letter to its leg, before giving a series of hoots and taking off through the window, flying off to deliver Harry's letter at once. You're already up, so let's get into the books again. I think we should tackle the concept of deflecting spells. Harry just nodded and turned to the piles of books that sat on the dresser in the room, looking for the book about dueling. Get up, Ron. Harry, come on now, get up. This is urgent. Harry sat up quickly, and the top of his head hit canvas. He could tell that something was wrong. The noises in the campsite had changed. The singing had stopped. He could hear screams and the sound of people running. He slipped down from the bunk and reached for his clothes, but Mr. Weasley, who had pulled on his jeans over his own pajamas, said, "No time, Harry. Just grab a jacket and get outside. Quickly." Harry did as he was told and hurried out of the tent, Ron at his heels. By the light of the few fires that were still burning, he could see people running away into the woods, fleeing something that was moving across the field toward them, something that was emitting odd flashes of light and noises like gunfire. Loud jeering, roars of laughter, and drunken yells were drifting toward them. Then came a burst of strong green light, which illuminated the scene. A trio of wizards, tightly packed and moving together with wands pointing straight upward, was marching slowly across the field. Harry squinted at them, and he realized that they didn't seem to have faces. Then he realized that their heads were hooded and their faces masked. Black hooded cloaks, masked faces. These are Death Eater's followers of the Dark Lord, Harry. High above them, floating along in midair, for struggling figures were being contorted into grotesque shapes. It was as though the masked wizards on the ground were puppeteers, and the people above them were marionettes operated by invisible strings that rose from the wands into the air. Two of the figures were very small. More wizards were joining the marching group, laughing and pointing up at the floating bodies. Tents crumpled and fell as the marching crowd swelled. Once or twice Harry saw one of the marchers blast a tent out of his way with his wand. Several caught fire. The screaming grew louder. The floating people were suddenly illuminated as they passed over a burning tent, and Harry recognized one of them, Mr. Roberts, the campsite manager. The other three looked as though they might be his wife and children. One of the marchers below flipped Mrs. Roberts upside down with his wand. Her nightdress fell down to reveal voluminous drawers, and she struggled to cover herself up as the crowd below her screeched and hooted with glee. Interesting, they would do that to muggles. Would they dare raise their wands against someone like you, Harry? Let's find out. Harry heard Mr. Weasley shouting that the adults were going to join the ministry in breaking up the chaotic mess that they were currently dealing with. But as his voice got further and further away, Harry realized that he had gotten separated from the rest of the group. His hand went for his wand, and he found himself shouting at the cloaked figures who were taunting the muggles. "H-E-Y!" shouted Harry, drawing attention to himself. "Careful, Harry. Your Gryffindor is showing. Oh, look at this ickle wanker, said one of the figures. Avery, he looks like he should be in bed already, continued another one. Yaxley, he looks like he's going RO cry, said the third and final one. Antonio. Harry drew his wand into a ready position and said, "Leave the muggles alone." The one that the voice had called Avery snorted, and Harry scowled before he fired a red bolt of magic at Harry. Harry, for his credit, didn't blink as he kept his eyes locked onto the spell, and the trio of Death Eaters watched as the spell got close to Harry before slowly warping to the left of Harry, circling around his back, and slingshotting back at Avery, who dropped to the ground to avoid the spell. "That look familiar, mates?" asked Antonio in a whispering tone. "I haven't seen anyone else do that since the Dark Lord," replied Yaxley. Harry slashed his wand at the muggles, breaking the spells used on them, and flicked his wand to gently float them back down to the ground, before telling the family of four, "Get behind me, or get out of here." They ran off, and Avery growled as he returned to his feet, his mask stained from the dirt on the ground. "You're ruining our fun," spat Avery. Avery's weakness is that he never bothers to shield his legs. Yaxley cannot focus on defending and attacking at the same time. Antonio only uses dark magic. He cannot defend himself against anyone who bothers to cast back at him. These three men are not better than you, not better than us. Harry twirled his wand with it pointed at the ground as he banished shrapnel from all the trees and ripped up stones in the area. And just as it was mentioned before, Avery's shield didn't extend much further past his knees. A stone caught him in the right leg, and the crunching snap, sound followed by howling swear words. A well-placed silence charm shut Avery up, and he was in too much pain to cast the spell to remove it from his being. Antonio struck at Harry with a series of black and orange spells. The black spells will cause your blood to boil, and the orange ones will rupture your organs. The man has no creativity. Hit him with something simple. Harry used a simple schoolyard jinx, and Antonio didn't dodge or anything as it raced through his storm of spells. It hit him right in the foot, and Antonio didn't blink when he didn't feel any pain. He also tripped when he went to take a step forward as his shoelaces were tied together, and Harry got rid of him with a banishing spell that was aimed at the man's shoes. Yaxley was trembling. "Who the hell are you? Are you him? Are you the Dark Lord Reborn?" Harry tilted his head. "Huh? Get away from me," stammered Yaxley. A wall of fire separated the two of them, and Harry looked to see that the source of it was a man who was wearing a cloak, but no mask. The cloak was enchanted to hide his face as seen by the shadows that covered it. Yaxley ran off, using magic to float his friends away with him, while Harry looked at the newcomer, his cloaked face keeping contact with Harry's. And then, without warning, the silence was broken by a voice with what sounded like a spell to Harry, as it was not like any name he had ever heard before. Morse Mordra. In the blink of an eye, something vast, green, and glittering erupted from the patch of darkness Harry's eyes had been struggling to penetrate. It flew up over the treetops and into the sky. For a split second, Harry thought it was another leprechaun formation. Then he realized that it was a colossal skull, comprised of what looked like emerald stars, with a serpent protruding from its mouth like a tongue. As he watched, it rose higher and higher, blazing in a haze of greenish smoke, etched against the black sky, like a new constellation. Oh my, that is the Dark Mark. Someone is clearly a fan of the Dark Lord. The wood all around Harry erupted with screams. Harry felt that he could understand why, with the sudden appearance of the skull, which had now risen high enough to illuminate the entire wood like some grisly neon sign. There was a crack as a rush of purple lightning, and Harry turned around and slashed through the magic with his wand. The same cloak figure that had cast the glowing dark mark had cast a spell at him. The spray of the ripped-apart magic made Harry shiver, and he could feel spasms run down his sides as the magic, even when not complete, was powerful enough to still cause effects. "You are the most interesting person that I've ran into today," declared the cloak figure. "Everyone else has run away in fear. But yet, it is the mere child that provides the most entertainment. Barty, you may not have an advantage of this man, Harry." The man that the voice called Barty slashed out his wand 3 times, and Harry hissed as he recognized the feel of the orange spells from before. Weaving through the organ-rupturing spells, Harry used his magic to transfer some of the stones into birds that attacked Barty. Barty didn't even look around as a dome of green flames burst of his body and consumed the magically made bird, before the dome flattened into a tight belt-sized ring around Barty. Harry couldn't react in time as the green flames lashed out like a whip and slapped him on the left thigh, burning through his robes and clothes instantly. Harry hissed as he felt the area of his thigh blister up immediately. Harry started slinging stunners at the man as he carefully positioned himself behind a tree, just in time for Barty to continue his onslaught of offensive magic. Barty has a deep well of knowledge of spells, maybe even as deep as my own if I am being honest. What is his weakness? Stamina and power. He lacks control and will eventually pause due to his body not being equipped to just launch spell after spell. Got it? Harry reached into his body and folded his magic like one would origami paper and focused on the feeling that using parcel tongue, before turning all of the ripped-up tree parts around him into snakes. Circle around him and bite at his ankles, hissed Harry as he ordered the snakes to carry out his will. The rain of spells slowly started to die, and Harry rolled out from behind the tree he was hiding on as it exploded into a tsunami of splinters. An arc of black light grazes Harry's left cheek, and he could feel the gash that it caused. He could also feel the waterfall of warmth that immediately followed it. His hand cupped his left cheek, and he could feel the stickiness build up almost instantly. And out of the corner of his eye, he could see that his hand was already stained red as it struggled to contain the blood oozing from the wound. Enough playing around, Harry. Destroy him. You and I are not allowed to die here, to some pathetic former Death Eater. Destiny has a much higher ceiling for us. Harry didn't need to be told twice as the snakes hissed before they started launching themselves at Barty with no regard for their magically created lives. Fuck, roared Barty as one of the snakes managed to sink their teeth into his right ankle. The snake wasn't venomous, sadly. But the bite was still going to be annoying for Barty to deal with as Harry overpowered a banishing spell and sent a spray of dirty wood and pebbles at the man. Barty's following snarl as he was pelted with surrounding nonsense. Enough that there was tearing in his cloak, and Harry could see bruising on the skin underneath starting to form already, was only a sign of things to come. Magic washed over the area, and the temperature that in the battle already felt like it was blistering started to climb. This magic felt odd to Harry. He had never once in his life felt any magic like it before. Not even the dark magic that the Death Eaters had tossed at him earlier in the night had felt like this. If he had to put a word on this increasingly growing hot magic, it was as if the magic felt hungry. Pestis incendium, said Barty before his body started to shake, whether with anticipation or effort. Harry could not tell. Flames started to spray out of Barty's wand, flames so hot that all of the moisture in the air was gone faster than the blink of an eye. The trees around their clearing burst into flames without ever being touched by the flames. The flames coiled around Barty's form as it slowly took the shape of a large hissing snake. Harry could barely breathe as the air felt too hot inside of his lungs, and breathing out only let more of the lava-like air into his mouth and lungs. He could only watch as the large snake made of flames consumed his conjured snakes, and much to his horror, the snake made of flames grew slightly larger. Water erupted from his wand, and Harry sprayed himself in the mouth before directing the wand back over towards the snake. Barty didn't look all that concerned with the water about to his flames that were still connected to his wand by the tail. Harry, do not let your spell hit the flames. But it was already too late as the water hit the snake, and Harry saw why the voice had tried to warn him. The snake simply absorbed the magic in the water-based spell and grew larger, nearly doubling in size before Harry managed to cut off his spell. This is not normal conjured flames, Harry. This is Fiendfire or the Fiendfire curse. It is among the deadly curses ever to be brought into existence. It produces powerful, enchanted flames of immense size and heat that were capable of destroying nearly anything and everything in its path, taking the form of gigantic, fiery, magical beasts that sought out living targets. The extremely volatile and sentient cursed fire spread rapidly and incinerated nearly everything through mere physical contact. Fiendfire required extreme skill and intense concentration to control. How do we stop it? You would have to overpower the magic that is being used to keep it going. However, any magic that is used to try to subdue, it will only be added to its growing base of power. It consumes all magic that it comes into contact with. It's part of why it is so dangerous. What do I do? Let me think. There are methods that I would use that are not available to you. The snake lunged at Harry, and the flames washed over him, the world around him growing into an endless ocean of angry red flames. Harry crossed his hands in front of his face, his eyes closed as he struggled to think of what to do. Magic, magic, magic. I need more magic, thought Harry. You're doing something right. Continue doing it as I think of how we can escape this situation. Harry could feel the flames growing closer to his skin. The cocoon of pure magical intent that he had created around him was slowly being eaten by the snake. Give up, boy. You're going to die here and now. You're in over your head, taunted Barty as he poured just a more magic into his spell. The flames moving forward on Harry's body with a glacier pace. Harry wheezed as he couldn't pull in the air anymore. The foul taste of puke filled his mouth. His eyes were clenched tightly as he gripped his wand tightly as he slashed it, and a large thunderous boom filled the area as a large, transparent beam of magic erupted from the end of Harry's that ripped through the flames of the fiend fire before forming into a snake-like figure that sank its teeth into the chest of Barty. The man's chest exploded in a spray of blood, bones, and guts before his body collapsed, folding in on itself. Harry dropped to the ground. The warmth of the ash that filled the area was so inviting and relaxing as his body shivered from expending that much magic at once. There were pops heard as people arrived at the scene, and Harry saw Mr. Weasley standing over him, a look of relief on his face as he knelt down and slowly helped Harry sit up. "Never scare me like that again," Harry said Arthur as he conjured a thick, warm blanket with a wave of his wand and wrapped Harry in it. Harry heard a gasp as he saw Ron and Hermione come running over towards him. Ron looked at the ash-filled clearing, and Hermione dived towards Harry's sitting form as she pulled him into a tight hug. "Thank goodness. You're okay, Harry," wept Hermione before she pulled back and said, "You're so pale and cold." "Hey, that's my wand," said Ron as he looked over at the corpse of Barty. "Bloody hell, mate. Did you do this?" "Grab your wand, Ron. Let's get you kids home," said Arthur. "Out of the way, Arthur," said a cold, curt voice. It was Mr. Crouch. He and the other Ministry wizards were closing in on them. Harry got to his feet to face them. Mr. Crouch's face was taut with rage. "Which of you did it?" he snapped, his sharp eyes darting between them. "Which of you conjured the dark mark?" "We didn't do that," said Harry, gesturing up at the skull. "The guy in the cloak did all of this." "Yeah, we didn't do anything," said Ron, who was rubbing his elbow and looking indignantly at his father. "What did you want to attack us for?" "Do not lie, sir," shouted Mr. Crouch. His wand was still pointing directly at Ron, and his eyes were popping. He looked slightly mad. "You have been discovered at the scene of the crime." "Barty," whispered a witch in a long woolen dressing gown. "They're kids, Barty. They'd never have been able to." "Barty," repeated Harry as he pointed at the person who had attacked him. "That's the name of the guy who attacked me." Arthur looked over at the corpse. "Crouch, this looks just like your son. The one who died years ago." Mr. Crouch blinks as he flusters in rage, but Harry would never get to hear the rest of it as he swayed on his feet, before dropping to the ground unconscious. "You did well, Harry, better than I would have at this age. But please never put our life in that much danger again if you can help it. As mentioned before, I have grown rather fond of you and living. You know, I can't keep calling you the voice. You have never asked my name before, but you have earned the right to know it. You may call me Junior. /N. Wow, what a first chapter if I do say so myself. Hopefully the concept is something that is pretty straightforward, but I will gladly provide a deeper dive if needed for anyone who wants to know more. Feel free to leave a review, and I will message you back. I don't know if every chapter will be 7K word, but it should be easily 4K plus. That's my big comfort zone for writing, about 4,000 to 5,500 words per chapter. If you like this story, you might want to check out my story, Snake Bitten, which is an AU with an emphasis on magic and world building. Think about joining my Discord. You get to have access to giveaways, chapter previews, and even pick which story I'm going to work on. Use invite code SciXA2VX9. Until next time, HighKeyMars out. Chapter 2. The Voice. The Voice's Inner Thoughts, Parseltongue. Thoughts. Speech. You are absolutely soaked, even through your robes. What would you have me do? Act like the young boy who listened to me all summer, getting the best results that you've ever seen. The result was killing someone. Yes, someone who was trying to kill us first. Would you rather he be alive and you be dead? Stop acting like a naive child. Surely there is another way to go about life. We can't just kill people that we don't like. I have never once told you to kill anyone, nor will I. You did that on your own. It was your magic that followed your intent. I have done nothing but guide you to be more educated, more informed of the principles of magic. Harry didn't respond as he and his friends entered the castle, finally escaping the downpour of rain from the storm. "Well, move along then," said Professor McGonagall sharply to the bedraggled crowd. "Into the Great Hall, come on." Harry, Ron, and Hermione slipped and slid across the entrance hall and through the double doors on the right, Ron muttering furiously under his breath as he pushed his sopping hair off his face. The Great Hall looked its usual splendid self, decorated for the start of term feast. Golden plates and goblets gleamed by the light of hundreds and hundreds of candles, floating over the tables in midair. Nearly headless Nick, the Gryffindor ghost, greeted them with a beaming smile. "Good evening." "Says who?" said Harry, taking off his sneakers and emptying them of water. "Why not simply use magic to remove the water? Look at Granger." She did so with a simple, overpowered warming charm. Harry ignored the snide comment from Junior inside his head. "Hope they hurry up with the sorting. I'm starving." "Is this how it's going to be? You did something that you don't like, and you take it out on me? Imagine if every time you did something wrong that I gave you the silent treatment. I would never talk." "I'm sorry," caved Harry. "I guess I am just scared that I might be going dark." Harry had never heard Junior laugh before in his life, so the sudden crackle of wheezing laughter inside of his own head threw him for a loop. "You got pulling my old leg. What's so funny?" "Harry, you didn't cast a dark magic-based spell. Hell, you didn't cast any spell, actually. That was a case of accidental magic. Your magic lashed out to save you. Because in case you missed it, a former Death Eater was trying to murder you. But I still killed someone. How? The snake thing ripped him apart. I was there, but how did you do it?" "I don't know. Almost like you didn't do it, and it was an accident." "It was an accident. A magical one." "I mean, that sounds right. So, your magic lashed out in an attempt to save you, and you accidentally harmed, or in this case, killed someone. And now you're the next great dark wizard?" "When you put it like that, it sounds stupid." "You don't say." "Okay, so what was it?" "Accidental magic. At my age. Didn't you blow up your uncle's sister last year? You're being naive to act like your emotions don't impact your magic. What is the base of all spells? Intent. And I am sure that you intended to not die." "You're right, I always am." Harry blinked as Hermione slid food onto his plate and gave him a weird look. "I thought you were starving, but you spaced out and the food appeared a couple minutes ago. I wanted to get something on your plate before Ron went for thirds." "Sorry, I was lost in thought," admitted Harry. "Still thinking about this past summer?" asked Hermione. "Yeah," nodded Harry. "You don't think that what happens makes me a bad person, do you?" "Are you daft?" questioned Hermione. "It was accidental magic, Harry." I wonder who told you that." "But what about that guy?" asked Harry. "The man trying to kill you?" asked Hermione with a weird look on her face. "It's unfortunate what happened to him, but there is nothing that you could have done to save him." Harry frowned. "But, Harry, you were covered in flames. What spell did you cast to save yourself?" interrupted Hermione. "I didn't cast a spell," said Harry. "Then there is nothing you could have done to survive without your burst of accidental magic. If you can't recreate the effect, you didn't do anything wrong," continued Hermione. "Perhaps you should talk with Dumbledore or a healer about this." "No, I guess I just can't get what happened out of my head," said Harry. "The Muggles call that trauma," said Hermione. "Maybe you should talk to someone about how you're feeling." "Maybe I will," replied Harry, before he scooped mashed potatoes into his mouth as his stomach rumbled with hunger. "Done being a crybaby? If Hermione thinks I am wrong about this, then you are right. She's the most rule-abiding person I know. Didn't she light one of your professors on fire?" "Morale gray area. You will talk to Dumbledore about this past summer, about what happened, and you will do it tonight. But I understand what you were saying with the accidental magic stuff, and that I'm not a bad person. And while I want to believe you, I am also inside of your head. Talking to the old man will help you. He will tell you that you did nothing wrong, and you can honestly put it to bed. I guess, Harry, if you wanted to cut something, would you use Exicial or the simple cutting curse?" "I've never heard of Exicial, so I guess the simple cutting curse." "Good. Exicial is a Latin dark magic spell for cutting things. It means fatal cut. No matter what spell you used, you were going to cut something. That Weasley boy has you thinking of things being light or dark. It does not matter. The intent to cut something is what is going to power both spells. What were you thinking of when the fiend fire was wrapping around us? How I could survive it? Then there you go. Your intent was never to harm anyone. It was always to survive the attack. You need to forgive yourself before you can progress, which is why you are going to speak to the old man after dinner. Yes, sir. Harry had continued to eat during this mental conversation, with it ending just as the food disappeared and there was a deafening rumble of thunder, and the doors of the great hall banged open. A man stood in the doorway, leaning upon a long staff, shrouded in a black traveling cloak. Every head in the great hall swiveled toward the stranger, suddenly brightly illuminated by a fork of lightning that flashed across the ceiling. He lowered his hood, shook out a long mane of grizzled, dark gray hair, then began to walk up toward the teacher's table. A dull clunk echoed through the hall on his every other step. He reached the end of the top table, turned right, and limped heavily toward Dumbledore. Another flash of lightning crossed the ceiling. Hermione gasped. That is Mad-Eye Moody, one of the best dark witch or wizard hunters to ever be born. It's over for you now, Harry. They know about the darkness inside of you. They've sent the best after you. After us. I know you're being sarcastic, but should we be worried about him? I would be. He's insane. What do you mean by that? Have you grown less intelligent over the summer? What makes him insane? He's been exposed to the darkest branches of magic. There is a reason his nose doesn't grow back. There is a reason he has a wooden leg. That staff isn't just for show. He needs it to help himself walk about. Oh, yes. Be on guard around him. Not because he's going to be coming after you, but because he's going to be a bit wild. Also, because I've crossed wands with the real Moody, and while this one is a quality actor, this is not the same Mad-Eye. 11 days later, Harry's conversation with Dumbledore had reassured him that he had done what anyone else would have done in that situation, and that he was still a polite, morally correct young. Junior had been right. It had made Harry feel a lot better to have his actions co-signed by the headmaster. You need to twist your wrist when you jab the wand. If you twist the wand with the jab, you are dispelling the buildup of magic. Harry sighed as he twisted his wrist as he jabbed his wand, and his teacup was successfully duplicated, splitting into 2 equal teacups, which Flitwick came by and tested with a tap of his wand. Good Merlins, Mr. Potter, exclaimed the half-goblin professor. Not only have you cast the spell correctly, but you also did it silently. Someone has read ahead on their OWL's theory. Harry blushed as rubbed the back of his head. I have felt that maybe I could live up to my potential a bit more than I have in the past. I'll say that you are doing a splendid job, Mr. Potter, replied Flitwick. You might even be able to apply for a summer internship with an enchanter in the Diagon Alley after your OWLs, if this is the type of effort that you are planning on keeping up for the remainder of your years here. Hermione looked at Harry's twin teacups and her own unduplicated teacup and bit her lip in wonder. How did you do it? Asked Hermione as they finished packing up. Her own spell have not worked. Everyone but Harry had been assigned a 17-inch essay on the properties of the duplication charm. I allowed the intent of the spell to guide me towards the correct combination of magic, desire, and power, replied Harry. But how? Asked Hermione once more, ignoring the very much real answer that Harry had just given her. Magic, answered Harry. Hermione rolled her eyes. Fine, be a prat, and keep your secrets. I literally told her the answer. She's never going to accept that, Harry. It's because she's Muggle-born. Whoa. Relax, it's not a racist comment. It's simply due to the difference in upbringing. She might study magical theory, but she doesn't understand it like I do, like you've come to. Why do you say that? Because if she was really that tuned in with her own magic, she would never have any issue casting a spell. I guess I never thought of it like that. Going back to last year, when we cast the Patronus charm, haven't you felt your magic slowly becoming easier to control? Hey, it actually has become much easier to understand. That is due to all our reading this past summer. You've started to learn and understand how motions, incantations, intentions, and desire all impact magic. Harry mentally nodded as he arrived at the Dada classroom. This was the lone class that he hadn't been to yet this school year. Mad, I had seen just about every other year besides his year so far, but this was the end of the first week of classes and their time was due. Harry walked into the class and sat in the first row of desks, right in the middle. It was where Junior had insisted that he sit, and the voice in the back of his head had been a great judge of what to do so far. Soon, he heard Moody's distinctive clunking footsteps coming down the corridor, and he entered the room, looking as strange and frightening as ever. Harry could barely make out the clawed, wooden foot protruding from underneath his robes. "You can put those away," he growled, limping over to his desk and sitting down. "Those books. You won't need them." The class all returned their books to their bags, Ron looking excited beside Harry on the right, while Hermione looked a bit put out on his left. Moody took out a class roster, shook his long mane of grizzled gray hair out of his twisted and scarred face, and began to call out names. His normal, "I'm moving steadily down the list," while his magical, "I swiveled around, fixing upon each student as he or she answered. Right then, he said, when the last person had declared themselves present, "I've had a letter from Professor Lupin about this class. Seems you've had a pretty thorough grounding in tackling dark creatures. You've covered boggots, redcaps, hinkypunks, grindylows, kappas, and werewolves. Is that right?" There was a general murmur of assent. "But you're behind. Oh, so very behind on dealing with curses," said Moody, his voice almost becoming a sing-songy as he said that. "So I'm here to bring you up to scratch on what wizards can do to each other. I've got 1 year to teach you how to deal with dark dash." "What? Aren't you staying?" Ron blurted out. Moody's magical eye spun around to stare at Ron. "You'll be Arthur Weasley's son, eh?" Ron nodded in confirmation. Moody smirked. "I like your old man, Sonny. Your father got me out of a very tight corner a few days ago. Yeah, I'm staying just the 1 year. Special favor to Dumbledore, the old goat. 1 year, and then back to my quiet retirement." He gave a harsh laugh, and then clapped his gnarled hands together. "So, straight into it. Curses. They are a branch of magic, used strictly for offensive purposes. Now, according to the Ministry of Magic, I'm supposed to teach you counter curses and leave it at that. But no student of mine is going to leave my classroom with only the ability to shield and run away," started Moody. The class was as silent as Harry had ever seen it. Nobody dared to say anything, and from the looks of it, everyone was hanging on to Moody's every word. "How are you supposed to defend yourself against something you've never seen? A wizard who's about to put an illegal curse on you isn't going to tell you what he's about to do. He's not going to do it nice and polite to your face. You need to be prepared. You need to be alert and watchful," continued Moody before over his shoulder he jabbed his wand. Behind Harry, Lavender jumped and blushed. She had been showing Parvati her completed horoscope under the desk, but Moody had caused the piece of paper to burst into flames, ruining the piece of paper instantly. Apparently Moody's magical "I could see through solid wood," as well as out of the back of his head. "You would do well to pay attention in my class," warned Moody. "If you think this is one of those classes where you can doze off, do other classes' homework, nap, or bury your face in a book, you are sorely mistaken." His threatening words hung over the class, causing several students to shiver at the thought of drawing his ire. "So, do any of you know which curses are most heavily punished by wizarding law?" asked Moody after he was certain his words had gotten through to the masses. He limped up and down the gaps of the desks in his class, his eyes scanning the room as he did so. Several hands rose tentatively into the air, including Ron's and Hermione's. Moody pointed at Ron, though his magical eye was still fixed on Lavender. "Air," said Ron tentatively. "My dad told me about one called the Imperious Curse or something." "Ah, yes," said Moody appreciatively. "Your father would know that one. Gave the Ministry a lot of trouble at one time, the Imperious Curse." Moody walked around his desk and opened his desk drawer and took out a glass jar. 3 large black spiders were scuttling around inside it. Harry felt Ron recoil slightly next to him, not that he could blame him after second year. Moody put the jar down on the desk, and he turned back to the class. "This curse is not something that should be taken lightly. It requires extreme mental strength and discipline. You have to be able to completely overpower the other person's will, or they can throw off the spell. It's something else to have another person or being's life in your hands. This spell is one of the most difficult to cast, one of the most straining to maintain. Only a powerful witch or wizard would be able to cast it and keep it up. In the last war, the Dark Lord's forces used this spell with mixed results." Harry felt an icy sensation crawl down his spine at those words, as if he wasn't getting the same message as the words being spoke. Moody slowly opened and reached into the jar, caught one of the spiders, and held it in the palm of his hand so that they could all see it. He then pointed his wand at it and muttered, "Imperio!" The spider leapt from Moody's hand on a fine thread of silk and began to swing backward and forward as though on a trapeze. It stretched out its legs rigidly, then did a back flip, breaking the thread and landing on the desk, where it began to cartwheel in circles. Moody jerked his wand, and the spider rose on two of its hind legs and went into what was unmistakably a tap dance. Everyone was laughing, everyone except Moody, Neville, and Harry. "Think it's funny, do you?" he growled. "You'd like it, would you, if I did it to you?" He flicked his wand, and the spider threaded a noose from its own silk before hanging itself. The spell wore off, and the spider spasmed as it tried to break the complicated knot that it had been forced to make. But the more it struggled, the tighter the silk became until the spider's head region was crushed by the loop. "You see what I could do with a mere flick of my wand to any of you?" asked Moody. His voice was faint. Yet, Harry swore that he heard a hint of pride in it. "How easy would it be to have you in that same position? How easily would I be able to force you to put your fellow classmates in that position while they slept?" "Where is your laughter now?" questioned Moody. Nobody said anything now. Nobody was laughing now, as they saw the actual horror of the spell with their own eyes. "Anyone else know one?" "Another illegal curse?" asked Moody as he vanished the dead spider's remains. There were a lot less hands that flew into the air this time, but to Harry's surprise, among them was Neville's. "Yes," breathed Moody, his magical eye rolling right over to fix on Neville, and he seemed excited to see the boy raise his hands. "Tell us, Longbottom, what is another unforgivable curse?" How did he know Neville's name? What was wrong with Moody? "There's one, the Cruciatus curse," said Neville in a small but distinct voice. Moody smiled, and it looked unnatural on his scarred face, and he eagerly said, "Perfect answer, Longbottom." Moody reached into the jar for the next spider and placed it upon the desktop, where it remained motionless, apparently too scared to move. "The Cruciatus curse," said Moody, "is a spell that is not about mentally overpowering your opponent. No, this is about causing someone you dislike pain. You must hate with every fiber of your being. You must let the anger take over. You must wish them to suffer. Needs to be a bit bigger for you to get the idea," he said, pointing his wand at the spider. "Engorgo!" The spider swelled. It was now larger than a tarantula. Abandoning all pretense, Ron pushed his chair backward, as far away from Moody's desk as possible. Moody raised his wand again, pointed it at the spider, and muttered, "Crucio!" At once, the spider's legs bent in upon its body. It rolled over and began to twitch horribly, rocking from side to side. No sound came from it, but Harry was sure that if it could have given voice, it would have been screaming. Moody did not remove his wand, and the spider started to shudder and jerk more violently. When the spell is left on a target for too long, the subject continues to take damage. No matter how strong they are, no matter how mentally strong they are, stated Moody, they crumble like the pathetic insects that they are. "Enough," stated Harry as his body sent out a flare of magic that pushed away the desks around him. Moody stopped as he looked at Harry, who was gripping his wand so tightly that his knuckles were turning white. Behind him was a Neville that was trembling as tears poured down his face, his eyes locked on to the spasming form of the spider. The burst of magic from Harry had dispelled the spell from Moody, who glanced at his wand, and then back to the glaring 14-year-old boy. "You are in fact correct, Mr. Potter," continued Moody with glee. "When a subject has been put under the Cruciatus for too long, and it has lost all of its brain function, there's only one thing left to do. Does anyone know?" Nobody said anything as the glaring Harry continued to stand in the front of the class between the students and Moody. Nobody knows the answer? Nobody wants to say it," mused Moody, another slight smile twisting his lopsided mouth. "Yes, the last and worst, Avada Kedavra, the killing curse. It is unblockable, and the only person to survive it is standing in the front of the class." Any eyes in the class that hadn't been staring at the standing Harry were now, and Harry felt like he was going to puke as Moody circled the spasming spider on the desk. "To cast this spell, it requires a great deal of power," started Moody as he continued to limp around the desk. "You must accept that the person who gets hit by the spell is going to die. You must accept that person is going to die by the spell. That they must die." Moody raised his wand, and Harry felt a sudden thrill of foreboding. Avada Kedavra, said Moody in the calmest voice he had used all day, as if he wasn't killing a living creature for the fun of it in the class. There was a silence that filled the room as Moody vanished the spider that he had just finished killing. Avada Kedavra is a curse that needs a powerful bit of magic behind it. All of you could get your wands out now and point them at me and say the words, and I doubt I'd get so much as a nosebleed. But that doesn't matter. I'm not here to teach you how to do it. Now, if there's no counter curse, why am I showing you? Because you got to know. You got to appreciate what the worst is. You have to understand that there is a beauty to the dark arts. They are more than just twisted magic. They require focus. They require power. They require that you understand how the magic works. They are not for everyone, finished Moody. The rest of the class was spent jotting down whatever offensive and defensive spells that they were certain that they could cast. Harry was very much happy when Moody had finally dismissed them and they had left the classroom. A torrent of talk burst forth. Most people were discussing the curses in awed voices. Did you see it twitch? And when he killed it just like that? They were talking about the lesson, as though it had been some sort of spectacular show and not a disgusting fanboy letter to the 3 unforgivable curses. It might have been great for them to know and see them, but he hadn't found it very entertaining, and neither had Hermione. Hurry up, she said tensely to Harry and Ron. Not the ruddy library again, said Ron, before Harry's elbow found his ribs. No, Harry spat angrily, pointing up a side passage. Neville. Neville was standing alone, halfway up the passage, staring at the stone wall opposite him with the same horrified, wide-eyed look he had worn when Moody had demonstrated the Cruciatus curse. Neville, Hermione said gently. Neville looked around. Oh, hello, he said, his voice much higher than usual. Interesting lesson, wasn't it? I wonder what's for dinner. I'm starving, aren't you? Neville, are you all right? Said Hermione. Of course he isn't. The Cruciatus was used on his parents to the point that they were driven insane and are mentally dead. All that exists of them now is an empty shell that sits in the mental ward. Disgusting to expose a child to the horrors that his parents suffered and to openly mock them and the child while doing so. Oh yes, I'm fine, Neville gabbled in the same unnaturally high voice. Very interesting dinner. I mean lesson, what's for eating? Neville, it was wrong for him to show you that given, finished Harry, trying to show Neville that he was both aware of what happened but also not reveal it to Ron and Hermione. Neville wheezed as tears bubbled up in his eyes. I always hated them for not being stronger, but seeing it, how could they? Harry pulled Neville into a hug. I know what you mean, Hermione looked at Ron. Are we missing someone? I honestly dunno, admitted Ron. Give us a second, guys. I'll catch up to you two in a moment, said Harry as he broke apart from Neville. Hermione looked like she was going to argue against Harry's wishes, but for the first time in recent memory, Ron was useful and tugged her away. How do you know about them? Asked Neville once they were alone, the two of them walking to the top of the tower to sit outside in the pleasantly cool fall weather. You visited the hack Lockhart. I saw them while visiting Lockhart over the summer, lied Harry. Oh, said Neville. There isn't anything to be ashamed of, Neville, said Harry. Why do you say that? My grandmother thinks I disappoint them every day, muttered Neville. Because you know that they loved you, replied Harry. How can you know that? Asked Neville. They can't talk, they can't think, they can't do anything but spill drool out of the corner of their mouths and soil themselves. They're little more than bloody life-size puppets. Because they did it for you. Because they did it for you, repeated Harry. Huh? Neville, can I tell you something that I've never told anyone else before? Asked Harry. Sure. For most of my life, I hated my parents, admitted Harry. What? Why? Because growing up, I didn't know that they had died for me. I didn't know that they were even magical back then. I was told that they were unemployed drunk bums who carelessly killed themselves in a muggle accident, answered Harry. Who would tell you that? Asked Neville in horror. My only living family, admitted Harry. My mum's sister, but that's just wrong, stammered Neville. Exactly, my parents died for me, said Harry. Both of us were targeted by the Death Eaters. My parents died when Voldemort. Neville flinched, attacked, and your parents were put in that ward when the Death Eaters attacked. Guess what, Neville? They didn't give you up. They could have easily gotten out of that situation by giving your location up. Your grandmother is just upset that her son is gone. You make quite the repeater, Harry. Thank you for helping my friend. We are in this together. I guess I never thought about it like that, admitted Neville. Maybe we should just turn in for the day, suggested Harry as he stood up from his seat placed on the floor next to Neville and offered him his hand. With Snape and Dumbledore. How has the year started for you, Severus? Asked Dumbledore. This has been a rather acceptable start to the year, replied Severus. Interesting that you say that as well, commented Dumbledore. Flitwick and McGonagall also report the similar things. Sprout has said that her students have been sneaking out to visit the kitchens a bit more this year. Snape rolled his eyes at that remark. I'm sure you could just change the password and be done with that. Nothing wrong with a bit of youthful indulgence, replied Dumbledore. Now, tell me what you think of young Harry. He's different, admitted Snape. He seems to have a better grasp on things that were borderline common sense in the past. He cast a duplication charm silently, added Dumbledore. Snape blinked. Did you just say that Harry Potter cast a charm silently? Flitwick was rather taken back as well. Apparently Harry said that he was trying to live up to his potential moving forward, continued. Dumbledore. Interesting, commented Snape. His potions making has taken a step forward as well. But not just in timing and technique, but he also has developed a bit of knowledge on the shortcuts as well. Dumbledore raised an eyebrow. He has shown a massive leap forward in basically all magical fields, capable of casting silently now as well. All of this, on top of him killing Barty Crouch Jr. over the summer. Snape snorted. You believe that rumor? I have his unfiltered memory of the event, replied Dumbledore as he pointed to his pensieve. You are more than welcome to take a look at it as well. Snape walked over to the pensieve and reviewed the memory for his own desire, returning to Dumbledore's office with a slightly shaken look on his face. Dumbledore offered him a spot of Snowberry tea that he had a house elf pop up upon returning. He dueled several Death Eaters prior to Crouch Jr. I was not expecting that, admitted Snape as he accepted the tea. Did you notice anything out of the usual? Asked Dumbledore. You mean besides a child who relied on luck to tie his shoes prior to this past summer, being able to counter 4 different Death Eaters as well as being able to cast a mage spell? Asked Snape. Are we certain that is still Harry Potter? Dumbledore gestured to a device on his desk. I am most certain that this is still Harry Potter, but I was referring to the manner in which he adjusted to each new opponent. Snape reviewed the memory in his own head. You are correct. He made several adjustments that I'm not sure many in the Order would have been able to. Either he is capable of reading their minds. Started Dumbledore, he would need to be a powerful Legilimens, countered Snape. Or someone or something provided him with the knowledge of how to counter each one of their styles, finished Dumbledore. There was nobody else there, noted Snape. Potter, as much as I wish to discredit him, did face all 4 of them alone to save those muggles. I feel that we are missing something, admitted Dumbledore. He did come and talk to me after the arrival feast, but it was mostly to be reassured that he was not becoming a dark wizard. Snape rolled high eyes. The boy is a Gryffindor through and through. Only he could face off against 4 dark wizards and come away thinking he was in the wrong for not dying. Not the worst thing. The upcoming war will require someone to be a beacon of hope, said Dumbledore. Harry wanted to reconfirm that he's not a bad person for saving lives by any means needed, while slightly naive and childish is not a deal-breaker. Lily's son being the next Dumbledore, muttered Snape. Unbelievable. I am uncertain that I could have cast that mage spell to fend off fiend fire like he did, countered Dumbledore. He completely overpowered those flames in a manner I haven't seen since Voldemort was walking around. Snape frowned. Interesting that you say that, because the spell warped out of the way, wrapping around his body. I hadn't seen that since the Dark Lord. Dumbledore sighed as he leaned back in his chair, his teacup sitting on his desk in front of him. Do you think that the scar could be influencing him? Asked Dumbledore. In what manner? Questioned Snape. The dark magic that lingers in the scar is not vast or powerful anymore. The scar is slightly fainter this year. I had noticed that it seemed to be healing, agreed Dumbledore. Besides, if the magic in the scar could influence him, why wait 14 years to make the boy something? Asked Snape. Maybe I am just a paranoid old man after all, chuckled Dumbledore. Snape cracked a smile. I don't mind it. It's rather nice to not be the only crazy person roaming the castle. Dumbledore laughs as he grabs his tea. All fun and games until the teacher evaluation forms come back. As the weeks pasted, Harry kept his eyes on Moody, never trusting the man. Junior seemed to think that there was something off with the man, which made Harry feel like he was in the right. Apparently, the man got permission from Dumbledore to cast one of the 3 unforgivable spells on them. "Potter," Moody growled. "You next." Harry moved forward into the middle of the classroom, into the space that Moody had cleared of desks. Moody raised his wand, pointed it at Harry, and said, "Imperio." It was the most wonderful feeling. Harry felt a floating sensation as every thought and worry in his head was wiped gently away, leaving nothing but a vague, untraceable happiness. He stood there feeling immensely relaxed, only dimly aware of everyone watching him. And then he heard Mad-Eye Moody's voice, echoing in some distant chamber of his empty brain. "Jump onto the desk. Jump onto the desk." Harry bent his knees obediently, preparing to spring. "Jump onto the desk." "Why though?" Another voice had awoken in the back of his brain. "You barely listen to me. You're going to listen to this scarred-faced man you don't even trust." Harry blinked as he unbent his knees. "I don't want to." Moody looked at him in complete shock, pumping more magic into his Imperio, but Harry just brushed it off with a glare. "I said I don't want to." "Now, that's more like it," hummed Moody's voice gleefully, and suddenly, Harry felt the empty, echoing feeling in his head disappear. "Look at that, you lot." Potter fought. Hell, he did more than fight it, he won. "Very good, Potter. Very good indeed. They'll have trouble controlling you." Moody cast Imperio again without warning, but Harry, who now knew what it felt like, dispelled the spell on his body with a pop of his own magic. Moody crackled with excitement. "Potter, you are not at all what they made you out to be. You truly have what it takes to be a great wizard. Everything they said about you was understating you." Harry mentally frowned. Who was talking about him? His other teachers? Dumbledore? His Muggle family? Maybe the Aurors, because he was constantly doing dangerous things near the end of the school years. Harry watched as Moody moved on to another student, casting the Imperio spell on them and having them cartwheel around the room. The class ended and Moody flicked his wand, and a small note shot out to each student. Harry caught his and read the note. Tri-Wizard Tournament. The delegations from Beauxbatons and Durmstrang will be arriving at 6 o'clock on Friday, the 30th of October. Lessons will end half an hour early. That just meant that there would be no classes with Snape that day, but that wasn't a big deal for Harry. He was completely okay with not having classes with the man, even if he was being oddly neutral towards him this year. As he arrived at lunch, he got a letter from Sirius, who was asking him to keep his nose clean, watch out for Snape, and never to let his guard down around Moody. As Sirius said, "We pranked Mad-Eye once during the Auror Academy during the First War. He hung both James and I on the flagpole by our underpants." Harry laughed at that part and finished the letter where Sirius mentioned that James and Mad-Eye had a bit of a Minerminty relationship, something that Sirius had been blessed enough to witness. It was what had made James so special during the First War. You don't cross wands with Voldy 3 times and live to talk about it due to sheer luck. Scribbling a quick recount of how peaceful his year had been, how he would keep an eye on both Snape and Moody, Harry wished Sirius good luck and mentioned the date of the first Hogsmeade trip, before giving the letter to the owl who delivered Sirius' letter. The owl took off immediately. Halloween Day, the day the Tri-Wizard champions would be chosen. The Halloween feast seemed to take much longer than usual, mostly because this was their second big feast day in a row. Harry was rereading his Transfiguration homework, wondering if he should add another couple inches on how proper wand motions would assist the act of transfiguring one object into another. "Oh, mate," said Ron, "put away the essay, you're turning into Hermione." "What's wrong with wanting a good grade?" asked Harry before Hermione could. "Nothing, but it's dinner time," noted Ron. "And I'm sure you'll find a way to eat enough for both of us," countered Harry. Hermione giggled, and Ron shot him a glare. "Anyway, who is becoming the champion for Hogwarts?" asked Ron. "Probably a 6th year who has an early birthday," suggested Harry as he rolled up his essay, giving up on adding to it at the moment. "Not a 7th year?" asked Ron. "No." Harry's right. 7th years have their newts to worry about. "They don't have time for a silly tournament," answered Hermione. "It's 1,000 galleons. It's worth it," whined Ron. "Not to anyone who is academically inclined," said Harry. "Huh? What's that mean?" asked Ron. Hermione and Harry shared a look and both laughed. "Smart people don't have to worry about making 1,000 galleons," Ron said. "Hermione, if you get good grades, you can get a job where you can make close to that every month. Think about senior Aurors. They pull in 150 galleons every week. Many would argue that they're overpaid for the amount of work that they do versus regular Aurors who made half of that weekly. I never thought of that, grumbled Ron. Harry leaned into Hermione and whispered. Who was surprised that he didn't think of that? Hermione covered her mouth as she giggled, and Ron shot Harry a glare. Neville said, I think the champion will be Harry somehow. Harry shook his head. I didn't enter the tournament. When has that stopped you from doing something before? Asked Neville. Ron nodded. He got you there, mate? Harry rolled his eyes. I have more money than I could ever spend. My trust fund has like 30,000 galleons. I don't even know how much I have in my family vault. Ron looked a bit bitter at the mention of how much money Harry had, but Harry ignored it as he was used to Ron's jealousy flaring up from time to time. Ron had proven to be a bit of a prat when he became jealous, but he always came around, and he was Harry's best friend with Hermione because he was a good friend. I could use 1,000 galleons, declared Ron. I think you would make a great champion, Harry, but I don't want to be a champion. It is never about wanting to be one. It is about showing people that you can. I don't want to show anyone anything. Of course not. Let them underestimate us. You are a bit too prideful at times. Not every single year has to revolve around me. I disagree. As Harry rejoined reality, he saw that they had already pulled the goblet of fire out and were getting ready to select the champions. The flames inside the goblet turned suddenly red again. Sparks began to fly from it. Next moment, a tongue of flame shot into the air. A charred piece of parchment fluttered out of it. The whole room gasped. Dumbledore caught the piece of parchment and held it at arm's length so that he could read it by the light of the flames, which had turned back to blue-white. The champion for Durmstrang, he read in a strong, clear voice, will be Victor Krum. No surprises there, yelled Ron as a storm of applause and cheering swept the hall. Harry saw Victor Krum rise from the Slytherin table and slouch up toward Dumbledore. He turned right, walked along the staff table, and disappeared through the door into the next chamber. The champion for Beauxbatons, said Dumbledore, is Fleur Delacour. The claps were far fewer, mostly males, but Harry added a polite, if slightly quiet series of claps as well. Fleur Delacour was clearly not the most well-liked witch from her school. Oh look, they're all disappointed, Hermione said over the noise, nodding toward the remainder of the Beauxbatons party, who did not look happy with the selection. You think they're jealous of her? Asked Harry. Of course they are. She's the best their school has to offer. Do you not feel that allure that she is letting out? I guess I do. It kind of feels like the Vila from the World Cup, because she is a Vila. So, you think she's like a half Vila like they said? Harry, there is no half or quarter Vila. You're either a Vila or not. Really? How does that work? It's a magical property. Think of how we can speak to snakes. You either can understand them or you can't. I guess that makes sense. When Fleur Delacour II had vanished into the side chamber, silence fell again, but this time it was a silence so stiff with excitement you could almost taste it. The Hogwarts champion was next. Murmurs of Cedric or Angela or Flint, and the goblet of fire turned red once more. Sparks showered out of it. The tongue of flame shot high into the air, and from its tip, Dumbledore pulled the third piece of parchment. The Hogwarts champion, he called Harry Potter. The name came out much less certain than the previous names, and everyone turned to look at Harry who, for his part, looked as confused as everyone else. There was no applause. A buzzing, as though of angry bees, was starting to fill the hall. Some students were standing up to get a better look at Harry as he sat, frozen, in his seat. Up at the top table, Professor McGonagall had got to her feet and swept past Ludo Bagman and Professor Karkaroff to whisper urgently to Professor Dumbledore, who bent his ear toward her, frowning slightly. Harry turned to Ron and Hermione. Beyond them, he saw the long Gryffindor table all watching him, open-mouthed. I didn't put my name in, Harry said blankly. You know I didn't. Both of them stared just as blankly back. Well, Harry, looks like we get a chance to show them what we can do. I want you to know from the bottom of my heart, I fucking hate every single part of my shitty arse life. Sure, now let's win this thing. Show the world how bloody great Harry Potter really is. /n. Hi, this chapter ended up being just as long, if not longer, than Chapter 1. I want to say that I am slowly changing Harry's personality, meaning that he's still a Boy Scout type of person right now. You would think killing someone makes him a bad person at this point in canon, but as you know, this shit is about to go left. I'll be making a pairing choice by the end of the 4th year. I have previously done a Harry/Fleur story and would be okay with doing that again. If you think Mad-Eye Moody is moody, you're wildly incorrect. If you have any questions, leave them in a review or PM, or join my Discord and ask them to me directly. Use invite code SciXA2VX9. Until next time, HKM out. Chapter 3/N. Real quickly before we get into the story, this is not a goody-goody pure-hearted Harry Potter story, nor is this some OP Dark Lord Wank Fest Harry Potter story. Harry is starting off at the canon pure-hearted Harry and slowly going to swing back and forth between making the wrong decision and making the right decision. Someone complained that they didn't even finish the first part of the last chapter and saw the story as, this is another generic goody two-shoes Harry story. Doing anything you can to justify Harry being a staunch proponent of the light, whilst minimizing the power of dark magic. It just feels awfully contrived, which is rather stupid as we saw Harry literally kill a man in Chapter 1 with his own magic, and he needed to come to terms with that. I don't know about you people, but when I was 14 years old, I wasn't murdering people, nor did I think that was normal. Let's have a hint of common sense, please. The voice. The voice's inner thoughts / the voice during flashbacks, parcel tongue. Thoughts. Speech. Are you okay? What do you think? That my dislike for the mindless sheep that walk about this school grows by the second. Thanks. Do you wish for me to help you put a taboo on your name? You know how to do that? I know many things about many things. I see. Harry sat alone at the Gryffindor table, more metaphorically than actually. The table was packed with other students, but nobody sat within 5 feet of him. Thus, he was sitting on the end closest to the door to the Great Hall. You would think these people would grow tired of being wrong about you. They do this basically every year. They can't help it, they're scared. Of what? You. You wouldn't harm a fly unless it asked you to. They're just upset that I was chosen as champion. No, they're angry because you were chosen to represent Hogwarts. Whoever placed your name in before the cup was hidden behind the age line Ward did, so knowing how powerful you are. It would be extremely difficult to trick something like the goblet without doing something that would leave a magical imprint. So, what is our plan besides winning? Do we need a plan other than win? Maybe. Just eat your toast. We have a lot of dueling to go over soon. Harry absent-mindedly nodded as he munched on the toast, his mind drifting back to the moment when he was selected. At the top table, Professor Dumbledore had straightened up, nodding to Professor McGonagall. Harry Potter, he called again. Harry, up here if you please. Go on, Hermione whispered, giving Harry a slight push. Harry got to his feet, trod on the hem of his robes, and stumbled slightly. He set off up the gap between the Gryffindor and Hufflepuff tables. It felt like an immensely long walk. The top table didn't seem to be getting any nearer at all, and he could feel hundreds and hundreds of eyes upon him, as though each were a searchlight. The buzzing grew, louder and louder. After what seemed like an hour, he was right in front of Dumbledore, feeling the stares of all the teachers upon him. "Well, through the door, Harry," said Dumbledore. He wasn't smiling, and neither was Harry at this moment. It felt like a punch to the gut. This always happened to him. Harry moved off along the teacher's table. Hagrid was seated right at the end. He did not wink at Harry, or wave, or give any of his usual signs of greeting. He looked completely astonished and stared at Harry as he passed like everyone else. Harry went through the door out of the Great Hall and found himself in a smaller room, lined with paintings of witches and wizards. A handsome fire was roaring in the fireplace opposite him. The faces in the portraits turned to look at him as he entered. He saw a wizened which flit out of the frame of her picture and into the one next to it, which contained a wizard with a walrus mustache. The wizened which started whispering in his ear. Victor Crumb and Fleur Delacour were standing around by the fire. They looked strangely impressive, silhouetted against the flames. Crumb, hunched up and brooding, was leaning against the mantelpiece, slightly apart from Fleur Delacour, who looked around. When Harry walked in and threw back her sheet of long, silvery hair. "What is it?" she said in slightly accent English. "Do they want us back in the hall?" Before Harry could say anything in response, there was a sound of scurrying feet behind him, and Ludo Bag, man, entered the room. He took Harry by the arm and led him forward. "Extraordinary," he muttered, squeezing Harry's arm. Absolutely a soft noise of impatient disbelief in the shadows. "As if anyone believes you, Potter," scoffed Snape softly. His black eyes were alight with malice. "Don't go blaming Dumbledore for Potter's determination to break rules, everyone. He has been crossing lines ever since he arrived here. Are you going to let him talk to you like that? What should I do? Banish that man's sleeve. Harry was certain that was a bad idea, so he did not do that. But he did put that information in his back pocket. All right, Snevelis, said Harry, repeating what Junior told him to. Snape flinched before anger exploded onto his face like Harry had never seen before. But Harry, being the son of a master prankster that he was one step ahead, and before Snape could say anything, Harry silently cast silencing spell on Snape. Snape's face turned a shade of angry red that would make Uncle Vernon jealous as he cursed Harry without ever being able to say anything audible. His anger only grew when he realized that he wasn't able to undo the spell when he attempted to. Harry turned back to Dumbledore. Anyway, how do we get out of this? There are things I want to do. Dying for some money isn't on that list. I'm afraid that you must compete, said Mr. Crouch. Why is that? Asked Harry. Your name came out of the goblet, said Mr. Crouch. You must compete for Hogwarts. Like show up and do nothing, compete. Or try my hardest to win. Compete? Asked Harry. Because I am willing to show up and do nothing. You have to attempt each task from the tournament to the best of your abilities, replied Mr. Crouch as he read from the tournament's rule book. Fine, I guess I'll win the whole damn thing, groaned Harry. But how did I get entered in this thing to begin with? Doesn't the Ministry guard this cup thing? Still have faith in the Ministry, Potter? That is rather interesting considering how often they fail, said Moody as he entered the room. It's very simple, to me at least. Someone put Potter's name in that goblet prior to the cup being placed behind the age-line ward. Madame Maxime arched an eyebrow. But why? Surely there is better options for Hogwarts than a young boy. Moody shrugged. Haven't you heard the rumors? Potter here killed a basilisk with a sword and drove off over 100 Dementors with a single Patronus charm. Harry was the first to react. How do you know that? Those are private events that I only told Dumbledore about. Dumbledore blushed lightly. Those went into official reports to the ICW and the Ministry. The school was threatened to be shut down. Mr. Crouch coughed. Anyway, there will be 9 tasks involved in this tournament. The first task is designed to test your daring. Thus, we are not going to be telling you what it is. Courage in the face of the unknown is an important quality in a wizard. Very important. Can you tell us when it is? Asked Fleur. The first task will take place on November the 24th, in front of the other students and the panel of judges. The champions are not permitted to ask for or accept help of any kind from their teachers to complete the tasks in the tournament, said Mr. Crouch as he once again read from the rulebook. The champions will face the first challenge armed only with their wands. They will receive information about the second task when the first is over. Owing to the demanding and time-consuming nature of the tournament, the champions are exempted from end-of-year tests. Harry stood up, ignoring the jeers by the other Hogwarts students as he made his way back to his dorm. He would rather read in the comfort of his own bed than spend time dealing with these people. So I know a little bit about the Triwizard Tournament. Of course you do. Anyway, the first task usually involves a dangerous magical creature. Does it also usually involve a 14-year-old? No, it usually does not. I'm fucked arente. Only if you fail to listen to me. The days dragged by slowly. The lack of contact with anyone outside of Neville was starting to get to Harry. Ron had stopped talking to him in a fit of jealousy that spread through Gryffindor like a wildfire. And sadly, due to Hogwarts students being mindless sheep, that meant that once other houses saw that Gryffindors were giving Harry the cold shoulder, they followed. Hermione was on the fence, choosing to split her time between Ron, Harry, and the library. The only one who willing stood by him was Neville, although Harry was convinced that Neville might not have any other friends besides him at this point. Technically, Hagrid had slipped him a note saying that the first task was dragons, which seemed to be an illegal decision to Harry. Mostly because he was 14 years old, and he didn't want to give his best effort to fighting a fucking dragon. Before the task started, there was this thing called the weighing of the wands. To attend such an event found Harry in a fairly small classroom. Most of the desks had been pushed away to the back of the room, leaving a large space in the middle. 3 of them, however, had been placed end-to-end in front of the blackboard and covered with a long length of velvet. 5 chairs had been set behind the velvet-covered desks, and Ludo Bagman was sitting in one of them, talking to a witch Harry had never seen before, who was wearing magenta robes. Victor Crumb was standing next to Fleur in conversation. Fleur looked a good deal happier than Harry had seen her so far. She kept throwing back her head so that her long silvery hair caught the light. A paunchy man, holding a large black camera that was smoking slightly, was watching Fleur out of the corner of his eye. Bagman suddenly spotted Harry, got up quickly as he started talking a mile per second. "Ah, here he is, champion number 3. And you come, Harry, and you come, nothing to worry about. It's just the wand weighing ceremony. The rest of the judges will be here in a moment dash." "Wand weighing?" Harry repeated nervously. "We have to check that your wands are fully functional. No problems, you know, as they're your most important tools in the tasks ahead," said Bagman. "The expert's upstairs now with Dumbledore. And then there's going to be a little photo shoot. This is Rita Skeeter," he added, gesturing toward the witch in magenta robes. "She's doing a small piece on the tournament for the Daily Prophet." "Maybe not that small, Ludo," said Rita Skeeter, her eyes on Harry. "This bitch is still alive?" "Huh? She's a nasty author of smear pieces. If she doesn't piss off half the wizarding population, she hasn't done her job." "I wonder if I could have a little word with Harry before we start?" she said to Bagman, but still gazing fixedly at Harry. "The youngest champion, you know, to add a bit of color?" "Lovely," said Rita Skeeter, as Harry apparently didn't have a say in the matter as she was steering him out of the room again and opening a nearby door. "We don't want to be in there with all that noise," she said. "Let's see, yes, this is nice and cozy." It was a broom cupboard. Harry stared at her. "Is this where you really want to be? In a broom closet with a 14-year-old boy?" asked Harry. "Not that you're the worst option to have drag me in here." Rita blushed as she took in the words that Harry had repeated, the insinuation being clear as day. "You won't mind, Harry, if I use a quick quotes quill? It leaves me free to talk to you normally," asked Rita as she pulled a notepad along with an acid green quill. "And what?" said Harry. "Do not allow her to use that quill. It will dramatically misquote you." Harry eyed the quill, testing. "My name is Rita Skeeter, Daily Prophet reporter." Harry looked down quickly at the quill. The moment Rita Skeeter had spoken, the green quill had started to scribble, skid-ding across the parchment. "Attractive blonde Rita Skeeter, 43, whose savage quill has punctured many inflated reputations." Harry yawned as Junior helped him guide his magic to send out a pulse that destroyed the self-writing quill. Rita looked at the quill as it dropped to the ground, a frown appearing on her face as she realized it wasn't going to work. "Is your quill having performance issues?" asked Harry. Rita nodded sadly. "It would seem so. Maybe I can give you an interview after the first task then," said Harry as he used this moment to open the broom closet door and slip out, getting away from the reporter. The next day, "Hey, is there some kind of ritual I can use to juice myself up? Not while you're 14. You're a growing boy going through too many changes. Come back to that idea when we turn 22. Can easily have the public thinking you're the next Merlin. So, what do you suggest that I do? Don't wait to the day of the task to ask me for a plan." "I have a plan." "You have a series of mistakes that you plan on chaining together." "Okay, so less a plan and more of a concept, I guess. If we live, I plan on finding a way to gain my own body for a single moment and just slapping the stupidity out of you. Love you too." He was pulled out of his thoughts about his fellow champion by Bagman, presenting the 3 of them a bag. "Ladies first," he said, offering it to Fleur Delacour. She put a shaking hand inside the bag and drew out a tiny, perfect model of a dragon, a Welsh green. It had tiny little scrap of fabric around its neck that said 3. Harry knew, by the fact that Fleur showed no sign of surprise, but rather a determined resignation, that he had been right. It had been the right thing to have told her what was coming. "The dumbest thing you could have done in a contest that we were trying to win. What if she died? Then you'd be one step closer to winning and getting our name on the trophy." The same held face-to-face for Crumb. He pulled out the scarlet Chinese fireball. It had a number 1 wrapped around its neck. He didn't even blink, just sat back down and stared at the ground. Knowing what was left, Harry put his hand into the silk bag and pulled out the Hungarian horntail, and the number 3. It stretched its wings as he looked down at it and bared its minuscule fangs. "Well, there you are," said Bagman. "You have each pulled out the dragon you will face, and the numbers refer to the order in which you are to take on the dragons. Do you see?" The trio of teens stood around as Bagman raced around the tent grabbing this and that, not that Harry was paying attention to it. In the distance, Harry could hear the pounding of feet, growing closer and closer with every second. There must be about 14 or 1,500 students between the 3 schools. The stand will be absolutely filled today. Now, as long as I can remember to stick to my plan, Then I should have no issues giving the fans a show they would never remember. Just want to remind you that your plan is full of shit once again. A whistle had blown somewhere. Good Lord, I got to run, said Bagman in alarm, and he hurried off. Harry walked back to the front of the tent, next to Fleur and Crumb. The roar of the crowd was making its way into the tent, and Harry couldn't help but wonder what was being said out there. Was it, "Hey guys, hope you like seeing teenagers getting shit stomped by dragons?" Or, "Have any of you ever seen an ant fight a human? This is going to look a lot like that, but with more fire." Bagman yelled as a whistle blew. "Mr. Crumb, if you please." Crumb nodded to Fleur and Harry and strolled confidently out of the tent into the arena. Another whistle and a thunderous round of cheers as Crumb entered the arena. "You'll do fine, I'm sure of it," said Harry before he could help himself. "Really? And how would you know that?" asked Fleur. "Well, you got my note, right? The one that while didn't provide all of the exact details of the task, did explain that there were dragons and that we had to get something from them and then go past them, right?" So was your note, huh?" Harry looked at the French witch and chuckled. "Come on, I literally signed it with my name." Fleur laughed in a light-hearted manner and said, "I know, it was rather bold of you to do so. But then again, cheating is a part of the history of the tournament. If you had not told me, I would have found out for myself at some point. Did you ever tell Crumb?" Before Harry could say anything, a whistle went off and Fleur slipped out of the tent and towards the arena. Harry listened with a great deal of concentration, hanging on to every word of Bagman and every oh and ah of the crowd. Finally, he heard Bagman yell out one last time, "Oh, and she's done it. That was one of the most impressive displays of magic I have ever seen. How is it that she managed all of that and never got touched by the dragon? I would give her a perfect score. I swear to Merlin, if you let this little crush of yours get in the way of us doing something amazing out there, I am going on strike." "What does that mean?" "It means that I will withholding my wisdom until you learn to be blessed with some level of competence on your own." Harry rolled his eyes as the whistle blew for the final time and he walked out of the tent, the booming voice of Bagman fading away. There were hundreds and hundreds of faces staring down at him from stands that had been magically put there since he'd last stood on this spot. And there was the horntail at the other end of the enclosure, crouched low over her clutch of eggs, her wings half furled, her evil, yellow eyes upon him, a monstrous, scaly black lizard, thrashing her spiked tail, heaving yard-long gouge marks in the hard ground. The crowd was making a great deal of noise, but whether friendly or not, Harry didn't know or care. It was time to do what he had to do, to focus his mind entirely and absolutely upon the thing that was his only chance. He raised his wand. "Accio Firebolt," he shouted. "This is going to end so poorly." He knew that it would take about 20 to 30 seconds before his broom would come to his location. He seemed to be looking at everything around him through some sort of shimmering, transparent barrier, like a heat haze, which made the enclosure and the hundreds of faces around him swim strangely. And then he heard it, speeding through the air behind him. He turned and saw his firebolt hurtling toward him around the edge of the woods, soaring into the enclosure, and began to make its way next to him. He was ready to mount it when his danger senses went off. The crowd was making even more noise. Bagman was shouting something, but Harry's ears were not working properly anymore. Listening wasn't important. Not at the moment, as Harry jumped to the side, and not a moment too soon. A burst of deadly dragon fire hit the spot that he had just been at, and Harry saw it in slow motion. His broom was still being pulled towards that location, and he couldn't cancel the spell in time as his broom raced into the flames and burned it in nothing in less than a second. "I fucking hate you with every ounce of my being, because how did you not think that a fire-breathing dragon would not burn a wooden broom? Ouch. It seems that whatever plan young Harry had is now most certainly doomed," said Bagman. Harry's eyes narrowed as his anger skyrocketed, and he turned to face the dragon. "Fine. Tell me what to do, and I will study that big-ass book of charms that I've been putting off. Promise?" "Yes." "Okay. Remember when we did the Patronus charm last year? Lean into me, and I will guide us to a victory here today. Also, that was a gift from Sirius, and I'm like 99.99% sure he stole that for you." With a wave of his wand, Harry conjured a sword, very similar to the sword of Gryffindor as he kept his eyes on the dragon. It was the only sword he had ever seen in his life. Thus he used it to fuel the image of a sword to conjure. The dragon let out a roar, and Harry flicked his wand up. A wall of stone rose from the ground, and just in time, as the dragon let loose another burst of flames. The flames hit the stone and stopped. The dragon, seeing that the flames couldn't get past the stone, spun. Its tail swept in and smashed the protective rock into pieces. Harry slipped behind another rock, and the dragon began to slam its tail into each rock. As it systematically destroyed each rock that Harry was capable of hiding behind, Harry continued to listen to Junior complaining in the back of his mind. I did not show up to show the world that we are fast and the best at running away. Do something and go on the offensive. Cerebro terrai. Earthly drill, said Harry as he pointed his wand at the ground. The spell hit the ground and drilled a small hole. The purpose of the spell became clear when it kicked up a bunch of dust, hiding Harry from the view of the dragon. Harry pointed his wand at the crumbled stones all over the arena, transfiguring the smashed rocks into clones of himself. He must have created 20 clones by the time that the dust cleared and the dragon could see again. Another roar came from the mighty beast, and a different type of roar came from the crowd. Harry slipped behind the dragon and began using a cutting curse to cut a circle into the ground. It seems that Potter has a plan. The dragon is so concerned with the transfigured rocks that it is completely ignoring Potter behind it. It seems that Potter is cutting into the ground. Announced Bagman. Harry felt a shift in the wind and ducked as he avoided the tail. He climbed to his feet, just in time to dodge the tail once again. Gritting his teeth, Harry looked at the tail and pointed his wand at the base of the dragon's back, where the tail and body met. A weak point on the dragon if there was one besides the eyes. Kayla slash, heavenly slash, cried out Harry. Much to his surprise, the dragon hopped into the air and flapped her wings. As the fire-breathing rampage was facing the wrong way, Harry took off running, ducking the tail of the dragon and avoiding the flames that it was unleashing almost non-stop at this point. However, his path to the golden egg in the nest was cut short by the dragon biting through the chain's pin that was keeping it pinned to ground, which meant that when the dragon flapped its wings, it took off into the sky instead of just hovering. Oh, would you look at that? It appears that with the dragon free of the chain that kept it grounded, Harry must defeat the dragon in actual combat. Said Bagman. Okay, I need to go on the offensive. Anything you can add to my knowledge of dragons would really help right now. Okay, so among the most important things that I remember about combating dragons was that you have to aim for the wings. Not the bone structure or the part that connects to the back, like with the tail. The dragon skin that makes up the wings are more like a bat wing than anything else. The skin is stretched extremely thin and weakest there. If you tear a big enough hole in the wing, you can ground it and prevent it from taking off back into the air. I want you to know that if this works, I will literally do whatever it is that you want. I will owe you anything that you want if I can make it happen. You can have it. I will keep that in mind, not just try not to get us killed. Harry stopped running and turned around to face the dragon. The magical beast was in the air about 75 feet about him, the wings flapping, and its mouth opens for a roar. In a moment of quick thinking, Harry banished a large rock into the mouth of the dragon, forcing the mouth of the dragon to remain open. The dragon tried to breathe fire, but the fire was unable to get the air needed to ignite and backed up into the dragon's throat in a burst of smoke. Turning his attention to the wings of the dragon, Harry sent a couple of Kayla slash at the wings, hoping to clip them. He was not disappointed when he managed to cause a small slice on the left wing. The dragon didn't fall from the sky. Instead, it spat the rock in its mouth out at him, forcing Harry to once again dodge. Refusing to give up and get killed by a dragon, Harry continued his assault on the dragon's wings. He finally landed a blow that caused the dragon to fall, punching a soccer ball hole in the left wing, using the slice that he had put earlier as a basis to punch through the hole cleanly. Nice aim. Harry never got the chance to reply as the tail of the dragon smacked into his body. It sent him crashing into the wall of the arena, not too far from where he had been cutting into the ground. Every part of my body hurts. We are extremely lucky to be alive. What do we do now? Kill, of course. Do you see this? Harry Potter, just survived a hit by a bloody dragon. Oh, this is an event for the ages. This is an instant classic. Bagman continued on Brown, nosing. Harry scrambled around the floor, his vision blurry, but Junior was guiding him, allowing him to move back to his nearly finished circle cut into the ground, and looked as the dragon sent another blast of fire at him. Ventilabus omnipotens, almighty push, shouted Harry and Junior at the same time, creating a shimmering silver dome of magic around them. The flames raced toward him before it slammed into a magical barrier that stopped it from advancing on Harry. This was nothing like the fiend fire, as the strain this time was worse than anything Harry had ever experienced. The heat of the dragon's flames washed over the barrier, causing blisters to form over Harry's hand holding his wand. The air grew stickier by the second, and inhaling it made things worse. A nasty wet cough ripped through Harry's throat, and he hissed as he felt the blood splatter through his grit teeth. The corners of his mouth tickled blood as he felt the greedy drain of magic from the spell. Harry dropped the barrier when the dragon let out another angry roar and instead pointed his wand downwards before blasting the ground apart, creating a circular platform of stone for him to stand on. The plan was working as the platform shot up into the air, Harry standing on it confidently until the dragon swatted at the platform. The claw grazed the stone and sent it spiraling as it continued to ascend. Harry lost his footing and barely managed to grab onto the edge as he almost fell to what would most certainly be his death. Taking a deep breath, Harry began to swing his leg back and forth. Feeling his grip starting to wane, Harry used magic to speed up his moment, and when he felt the time was right, he let go. His left hand reached out to the sword that he had created, and it shot off the ground and into his hand as he fell. Wow! It seems that Harry Potter is attempting to gain some type of momentum by swinging back and forth. Oh, what is this? It seems as if Potter has let go of the stone he was hanging off of. He is falling towards the dragon. The sword has shot off into his hands and, oh my gods, lady and gentlemen, ranted Bagman. Harry was falling towards the dragon, and with his extra control of magic, had a tiny rock slam into the dragon's belly and draw the attention of its head. Dripping the sword with both hands, Harry aimed as best he could while falling. His feet missed the snout of the dragon, and he panicked a bit. However, where his feet missed, the sword in his hands did not. The sword slid into the roof of the dragon, like a hot knife through butter. The force of him stabbing the dragon in the mouth and his body falling caused the dragon to fall forward. The hanging 14-year-old panted as he fell another 20 feet and landed on his feet. Crack! Crack! Ayak! His left arm, the one that had been holding onto the sword, broke at the elbow. His right ankle had snapped under the pressure of his landing. Somehow, he hadn't lost his wand as the dragon had collapsed to the ground. Thinking quickly, Harry reached out with his right arm and pulled the sword out of the dragon's snout. Potter has done it. He has slain a dragon. If I had not seen it with my own eyes, I would not believe it to be true. Never in my life would I have believed that a boy as young as Harry Potter was capable of slaying a fully grown dragon, let alone live to tell the tale, chanted Bagman. That is not a dead dragon. No, that dragon looks very much alive and very much angry. What do I do now? The best solution is a simple solution. Harry rolled sideways, his broken ankle sending pain shooting through his body as it twisted with his motion. He barely managed to avoid being crushed by the foot of the dragon as he banished himself away from the dragon. His back slammed into the wall of the arena, and he felt the blood flowing from various spots on his body. He tired looked ahead, wand and sword in his right hand, as the dragon snarled at him and opened its mouth to blast him with fire. Now do it now, Harry. Harry didn't need to be told twice. He dropped the sword and pointed his wand at the dragon. The bubble appeared around the dragon's head right as it unleashed the last blast of flames that it ever would. The flames hit the bubble of air around the dragon's head and created a limited supernova. The head of the dragon was cooked by the intense heat of the flames, and after a minute, Harry watched as the charred head hit the ground and the dragon lay dead. Unbelievable. I stand corrected. Potter has all but slain a dragon twice in a matter of moments. Harry just ignored Bagman at this point, as he cast a vastly overpowered summoning charm on the golden egg, shattering the anti-summoning runes that were placed around the nest. The egg didn't make it all the way to him, skidding along the ground before stopping right in front of him. He settled the heavy egg safely under his uninjured arm as he slumped backwards, his body aching, and he wiped some of the blood away from his nose as he swallowed a mouthful of the copper-tasting liquid that had slid down the back of his nose and into his mouth. He looked up as the sight of Professor McGonagall Hagrid appeared over him to meet him, their lack of smiles evident even from this distance. "That was insane, Potter!" cried Professor McGonagall as she got closer to him, which from her was not the worst praise. She flicked her wand, and Harry was levitating in the air, his body protesting the change in position, and his ankle went limp as there was no ground to keep it in place anymore. "I fucking hate this school," whined Harry. "You'll need to see Madame Pomfrey before the judges give out your score." Over there, McGonagall's voice faded in and out of focus. "You did it, Harry," said Hagrid hoarsely. "You did it, and against the Horntail and all. And you know Charlie said that was the war's dash." "Thanks, Hagrid," said Harry loudly, so that Hagrid wouldn't blunder on and reveal that he had shown Harry the dragons beforehand. Hagrid went to hug him, and Harry paled. As injured as he was, he probably wouldn't survive a Hagrid hug. Luckily for him, he was saved. "Potter needs the first aid tent. First, Hagrid." "He's," said McGonagall, stopping Harry from being killed. Harry landed on a cot and saw Madame Pomfrey standing at the foot of the cot, looking worried. "Dragons," she said in a disgusted tone as she looked him over, checking what seemed like every single part of him. "Look at your ribs, they're cracked into a bunch of tiny pieces. That elbow is almost completely destroyed, it's broken in 4 places. Your ankle is snapped into 3 pieces. The bone is almost out more than it is inside of you. And you have the nerve to smile at me? I should have you mentally tested for brain damage while I am at it," scolded Pomfrey. "Madame Pomfrey, I know I did some stupid things," admitted Harry as she mended his broken bones. "But I am pretty sure that I just became the youngest person to ever slay a dragon. I don't know whether to feel proud of you," said Pomfrey, "or strangle you to death for taking years off my life. If you think that we can just keep putting you back together each time that you hurt yourself, you are mistaken, Potter." Harry dozed in and out as Pomfrey finished fixing him up. The previous broke bones were healed, weak, but still healed. "I think you did masterfully today, Harry." "You don't mean that. I have grown used to you being rather Gryffindor in terms of behavior. My goal is to help you survive those types of things." Harry didn't want to sit still and wait. He was too full of adrenaline. He got to his feet as sore as he was, wanting to see what was going on outside. But before he'd reached the mouth of the tent, 2 people had come darting inside. Hermione, followed closely by Ron. "Harry, you were brilliant," Hermione said squeakily. There were fingernail marks on her face where she had been clutching it in fear. "You were amazing. You really were." But Harry was looking at Ron, who was very white and staring at Harry as though he were a ghost. "Harry," he said, very seriously, "whoever put your name in that goblet, I reckon they're trying to do you in." It was as though the last few weeks had never happened, as though Harry were meeting Ron for the first time, right after he'd been made champion. The moment of truth had come, and Harry didn't feel the happiness that he had imagined when Ron would apologize. Instead, he felt angrier than ever. Why did it take months for his supposed best friend to not be a piece of shit? "Caught on, have you?" said Harry coldly. "Took you long enough?" "Ah," questioned Ron. "Every year I get caught up in some plot and my life is in danger, and you refuse to believe me," spat Harry. "I risked my life to save your sister, and you couldn't even give me a chance to explain myself. Why do I need you to be my friend?" Ron looked as if he had been slapped upon hearing those words. Harry was about to tear into him even more when he saw a figure behind the redhead that he cared about much more. Fleur was standing there, eyes filled with awe as she stared at him. Hermione pulled Ron out of the way as the blonde beauty walked up to Harry. "That was by far the most insane thing I think I have ever seen," commented Fleur. "You actually killed the dragon with a simple bubble head charm." Harry puffed out his chest. "I have a tendency to do the impossible." Fleur snorted as she softly shook her head. "That is by far the dumbest thing I have ever seen, but I see that you are a real threat now." Harry smirked. "I was always the biggest threat to win this tournament. You just didn't know it." "I will keep my eye on you," replied Fleur. "I've always had my eye on you," countered Harry before he gave her a once-over. And not just because you're pretty. Fleur giggled as she walked away, and Harry was left alone in the tent. Let's go see your score. I better get a 50. You deserve a 0 for being a lower intelligence life form, because next time when I ask you if you have a plan, you should actually have one. Noted, and I am sorry. Did you really think that you could outfly a dragon? I would like to make no comment at this time. Go see your score. Harry exited the tent to a round of thunderous applause. People liked to see him kill things, as he barely survived. Looking up at the judges' table, stood before them as he wanted for them to acknowledge his presence. Apparently, that was all he needed to do. As the first judge, Madame Maxime raised her wand in the air. What looked like a long silver ribbon shot out of it, which twisted itself into a large figure 8. Mr. Crouch came next. He shot a number 9 into the air. Next, Dumbledore. He too put up a 9. The crowd was cheering harder than ever. Ludo Bagman's wand shot out a 10. He does know that you got lucky, right? I broke my arm, ribs, and ankle. I should not be getting a 10-foot. And now Karkaroff raised his wand. He paused for a moment, and then a number shot out of his wand too. 6, 8, 9, 9, 10, and a 6. Harry had managed to get a 43 during the first task. This put him above Crumb, who got a 41, and below Fleur, who scored a 46. Harry was more than okay with this. He knew to perform better if he wanted the next task, but besides knowing that he had to figure out the golden egg clue, when was the next task? As Harry slowly made his way back to the castle, walking slowly and somewhat aimlessly, Harry was joined by Dumbledore, who gave him a sharp look. You did rather well, Harry. I sense a but coming, sir. You killed a dragon, one that is technically endangered. Oh, I didn't mean to. I know. But you have to be aware and careful, tissed Dumbledore. The political world is always looking to knock down someone such as you or I. Doing anything negative is opening the door to being attacked by people who wish to attack you for the sake of attacking you. I appreciate the advice, sir. Tell me, Harry, what was your original plan with the broomstick? Harry blushed. I wanted to use the broom to outfly the dragon. Dumbledore blinked at him behind his moon-shaped glasses. You have a unique manner of thinking, Harry. Thank you. Anyway, the next task will be a free-for-all dueling tournament on Friday, December 16th. Please have a bit more of a grounded plan. Harry nodded. Thank you, Professor. It was only after Harry had climbed into bed that he realized that was the first time that Dumbledore had never smiled at him during a conversation. Never worry about whether or not the old man is smiling at you. There is a lot to do over these next couple of weeks before the duel. What do you have in mind? Are you going to listen to me without question? Harry hesitated. Yes, I trust you. I'll do whatever you say. Good. With Snape and Dumbledore. There was no tea this time. They were both looking at the memory of Harry fighting the dragon, their eyes taking in every detail of the fight, analyzing every movement and decision by Harry. Do you recognize those spells? Asked Dumbledore. It is rather rare for me to see spells that I do not know. Yes, they are Italian Latin spells. They come from a branch of the Slytherin family, answered Snape, but I hadn't seen them since the Dark Lord had used them. Are they dangerous? Asked Dumbledore. Kayla's Slash is a rather dark spell, admitted Snape. The sheer power required to cast the spell is more than most people can muster. Interesting. This is the second time that we've seen something done by Harry that hadn't been done since Voldemort, said Dumbledore. Things that require magical strength, no less. Snape stiffened. I have a potentially scary question, but it has only popped into my head recently with all this new information. Ask away, replied Dumbledore. As we are both aware, the Dark Lord is still alive. Are we certain that Harry Potter is still Harry Potter? Questioned Snape. That is a rather loaded question, replied Dumbledore after a brief silence. If Harry is not Harry, why wait so long to reveal their true nature? Do any of us really know what happened in the Chamber of Secrets? Countered Snape. For all we know, whatever dark artifact that possessed Ginny Weasley attached itself to Potter when it realized the boy had more magical potential. As interesting of a theory as that is, Harry brought back the artifact destroyed, dismissed Dumbledore. Harry is a unique person, someone that has been touched by fate, as per the prophecy, as you know. So what? Potter's remarkable improvement this year is based on fate, asked Snape. It could be a number of things, admitted Dumbledore with a sigh. Magic is a force of nature that none of us understand completely. I wish I could tell you that Harry is simply growing up and becoming more of the young man he always had the potential to be, but it could be the prophecy attempting to fulfill itself by giving him the power that Voldemort knows not. You have no idea what's going on, noted Snape. Do any of us? retorted Dumbledore with a smile. "If any of us could understand teenagers, the school would be much more peaceful." Snape could help but roll his eyes as he regretfully nodded his head. "That is true. Teenagers are not to be understood." Exactly, one of the bravest young men I've ever had the pleasure of knowing, someone capable of lying to the Dark Lord to his face, was once a young boy who was so scared of being rejected by his peers that he threw away the only friendship that mattered to him, said Dumbledore. Snape said nothing as he stood up and left the office, leaving Dumbledore alone with his thoughts, the puzzle of Harry Potter becoming more difficult by the day. Was it perhaps time to bring Harry in on the loop of the prophecy and his responsibility? He was only 14, much too young to bear the weight of the magical world on his shoulders, but at the same time, that weight was sliding down towards his young shoulders by the day. Voldemort was gathering himself and growing more powerful by the day. Snape's dark mark becoming less translucent was a sign of things to come. Dumbledore popped a lemon drop in his mouth, the calming draft-infused candy working rather quickly as his mind wandered back to simpler times. A time where his only focus in the world was being the most well-balanced wizard that would bring about peace to the wizarding world. A curly golden-haired young with a brilliantly bright and infective smile by his side as they sought to make something of themselves, to make a chance in the world. Well, even decades later, Dumbledore could take pride in the fact that he had brought about change. /n, another chapter in the books. I feel good about this. I have already started working on the dueling battle between the three champions. The funniest thing is that I said I probably wouldn't be able to produce 7,000 plus word chapters every time, but this hasn't been all that hard. Once more, Harry is not canon Saint Harry, or is he some lunatic murder dark edgelord that some fanfics make him out to be? He's going to be vastly a decent person for the most part, especially when he's 14. He will grow more self-interested and will become more powerful, exponentially so in the future, but it will be gradual to a degree. If that doesn't interest you, I am sorry, but there is plenty of Dark Lord Potter stories for you to read. Also, I do reply to almost every single review and PM. I like interacting with you guys. My Cobra Kai story will be getting an update this weekend, and then Snake Bitten before I drop the next chapter of this story, then 2 more chapters for other stories. The pairing for this story is still not decided, but I think I have a good idea of what I want the endgame to be. As always, please think about joining my Discord, lots of conversations and just overall good vibes in there. Join using invite code WV for BZHYQ. Chapter 4. The Voice. The Voice's Inner Thoughts. Parcel Tongue. Thoughts. Speech. Harry was inside the Chamber of Secrets for the first time in nearly 2 years. Not the main chamber, as he did not want to see the giant snake that had tried to eat him, at least not yet. No, he was still before the caved-in section of the chamber. You should let me guide your hand to write the runes. You don't think I could do it? Harry, your handwriting is tragically muggle, not exactly built for magical runes. Harry frowned. Was his handwriting really that bad? He released control of his right hand, and he could feel the arm starting to move on its own. What do these runes mean? You should know. I know that they are in an array rather than singular runes, but they should be familiar from your studies. Maybe I am not as well versed as we thought. Jerstav represents grounding and stability. When invoked, this rune allows the traveler to choose a specific moment in time by focusing on a natural element from that area, which is why we are using this stone cave. Timurin. The time rune symbolizes the flow of time. This rune acts as the key to unlocking the time travel ability. It must be combined with other runes to function properly. Fornt represents the past. When combined with Timurin, it sends the traveler to a specific point in history. The traveler must hold an object from the desired era to ensure accuracy. Framt symbolizes the future. Using this rune with Timurin allows the traveler to move forward in time. Visualization of the future world is crucial for successful travel. Verndaren represents safety and protection, essential for any time travel to shield the traveler from paradoxes and temporal dangers. It creates a protective aura around the traveler. Fangastor symbolizes the journey's end. This rune helps the traveler focus on the specific time and place they wish to visit, ensuring a precise arrival. Fagravel symbolizes harmony. This allows for us to bring all of the runes together, using all of them at the same time to create our little advantage. This is a lot of Nordic runes and magic. Very good, Harry. That would be correct. There is an old tale about a man whose name has been forgotten to time. They simply view him as a man who was magic personified. I do not wish to bore you with the details of a long, drawn-out story, so I will give you a shorter version. Magi the Time Weaver was a powerful mage in the ancient lands of the north, known for his expertise in Nordic runes and his ability to manipulate magic. A prophecy foretold his birth under the brightest star in the sky, destined to use the runes in a unique way to alter history for the betterment of humanity. Magi discovered the mythical time-traveling runes in a hidden cave, embarking on various journeys through time to witness forgotten civilizations and maintain the balance of time. Throughout his travels, Magi faced challenges and battles against dark forces, most notably against Skuggy, a dark mage who sought to create eternal chaos using the runes. In a climactic battle, Magi trapped Skuggy in a temporal prison, saving the timeline from destruction at the cost of his own strength. Despite this sacrifice, Magi's legacy lived on through stories and songs, with his knowledge of the runes passed down through generations. As time passed, the legend of Magi continued to inspire future generations, with the belief that a new mage would one day take up the mantle as the guardian of time. This mage would carry on Magi's mission to protect the balance of time and ensure that history unfolded as it should. The enduring legend of Magi serves as a reminder of the delicate nature of time. Do you think that is the full story? Of course not, Harry. There is always going to be more to every story. The only people who will ever know the full truth are those that are there. So, what is the next step? Place the hourglass in the middle of the array, and let's create our own time turner. Harry nodded and did as he was told before getting back into starting position and channeling magic into the array of runes. Closing his eyes as the magic flared and bright blue flames erupted from the runes, followed by a sandy brown color flame. Open your eyes. Harry did, so once he felt the heat wash away, leaving him looking at the tiny hourglass on a rope, the frame shimmering with magic. You know, this is probably extremely illegal. Then why would you have me do it? Because you don't have 3 years to catch up, and I refuse to let you make any more plans on your own. Besides, since when does something being illegal stop us from doing things? You don't think freeing an on-the-run prisoner is legal, do you? I'm going to shut up now. Put the hourglass around your neck, and then let's go back 12 hours. Why that long? Because we need to travel back before you arrived here, on top of getting in several hours of practice in. We will move into the main chamber, and you will practice your spells against the corpse. Because it's magically resistant. Very good. Harry walked into the middle of the scorched runes array, shivering as the icy feeling of magic washed over him. Picking up the ice-cold hourglass and slipping it over his head and spinning it around 12 times. Once he stopped spinning it, the world around him warped, and he found himself standing in the chamber just as it was before he arrived to create the time turner. He hissed in pain as the time turner burned like a stovetop, and he dropped it as it swung and hit his chest, the thick fabric of his robes protecting him from any further burnings. Let's get this over with. There is a lot of magic to cover, and even with an extra 12 hours daily, you will be hard-pressed to learn as much as you need to. Harry mentally nodded, and he moved into the main chamber. The corpse of the 60-foot basilisk was still completely whole, much to his surprise. You will be hard-pressed to use anything short of fiendfire that would even put a dent in that hide. It was so magically powerful. It will probably be preserved for another 1,000 years. Not if I have anything to say about it. Good, now, let's see you use that stunner. Harry's wand slipped into his hand, and he cast multiple blue stunners, each one slamming into the hide of the dead snake. It should be red. You aren't putting enough power into the spell. How do I put more power into a spell like this? I want you to think about the people you dislike the most. Imagine being chased by Dudley and his gang. You're running through the streets, and finally they corner you in an alleyway. They're getting ready to give you the beating you've been avoiding. Imagine that you could knock them out in a single blow. Harry took a deep breath before he unleashed a stunner that came out a blazing Gryffindor red and slammed into the snake, causing the snake's form to slide several inches as Harry panted as the rage-fueled spell drained him. Excellent. What did you feel when you cast that spell? Anger. Are you mad at the Muggles, or are you mad at yourself for allowing yourself to be abused by them? Harry didn't answer as he cast the stunner again and again. Each time the spell drained him less and less, his anger being required less and less. The basilisk didn't ever move again like the first successful stunner had caused it to. But by the time that Harry finished practicing the stunner, he could cast it with little more than a flick of his wand. His stomach growled, and Harry cast a Tempest Charm and was shocked that he had been down there for 7 hours practicing just his stunner. I told you 12 hours a day might not be enough. Could we do more? No. It was just a thought, one that you will banish from your mind this very instant. The human mind is only so strong, only so flexible. You're a 14-year-old boy. Harry, imagine the mind is a rubber band from the Muggle world. If you stretch it too far, what happens? It snaps. Exactly, and upon snapping, is there any repairing it? I don't think so. If you snap your mind by having 48-hour days, you would not be able to recover, and that would leave me alone in here with nothing but the dark. Sorry, I guess I wasn't thinking. You need to apply yourself more, Harry. I will not be able to do all the thinking for us forever. Eventually, you should be more than capable of thinking just as much as me. Harry nodded as he slowly made his way out of the Chamber of Secrets. His body had built up more fatigue than he realized, his mind much more tired than he had thought possible. He made way back to his bed under his invisibility cloak, sleeping from early evening until the first sunlight. Upon waking up, he snuck back down to the chamber and went back another 8 hours, training his banishing charm until it was approved by Junior. But this time it only took him 5 hours. Junior urged him to use the remaining 3 hours for a nap, which he did as he transferred some rubble into a bed. He went to class, trying his best to quickly learn whatever he was being asked to, before sneaking back down to the chamber once more and redoing the last 10 hours of the day, finally mastering the banishing charm. Each day was like this, and soon November was over, and December had arrived, covering the outside grounds in a blanket of snow. Dumbledore sat in his office as he used the instrument on the surface of his desk to monitor Harry's movements. The boy had been disappearing for brief moments every single day, but never more than 90 seconds. It was either a really unique error or Harry was using his cloak to avoid someone. Could it be his former friend Ronald? Perhaps, but most unlikely as Dumbledore had spied the two of them sharing a meal together the previous evening. The reports by his teachers told of a somewhat tired Harry, but one who was dominating their practical magical classes with ease, much to the surprise of his teachers. He was getting all of his charms done on the first try now and was slowly trying to cast first and second-year charms silently. He was capable of complete transfigurations with a jab or tap of his wand, much like how his father had been able to. Harry had been a really good transfiguration student, but he never had been big on the theory side of the branch, but Minnie's last reports told of a boy who seemingly figured it out. Moody said that Harry was able to throw off the Imperious Curse. Without fail, had mastered casting stunners, could will a shimmering protege into place at will. He seemed to have been practicing, as he was able to cast every spell that Moody was covering before. Instructions even began. Babbling said that he had been creating rather brilliant runes arrays. His knowledge of not just Egyptian, Greek, but even Norse runes would be impressive for a 5th year, which was rather interesting as you either understood runes or you were clueless in his experience, as he remembered even the most brilliant wizards from his past having learning curve issues with the subject, particularly his blonde former friend. Even Snape had little to nothing negative to say about the boy, claiming that his brewing skills had recently become adequate enough. All of which was great. Harry Potter always had the potential to be a great student. He had always appeared to be among the most powerful students in Hogwarts. But he had never applied himself, partly due to his friendship with Ronald and Hermione. Hermione had been a comfortable safety net, while Ronald had introduced a hint of laziness into the boy. Dumbledore had no issue with that. It allowed Harry to live a rather normal student life for the most part. But this recent change had him thinking of the last time he saw a student as well-balanced and excellent as Harry. And it reminded him of the question that Snape had suggested. Snape stiffened. I have a potentially scary question, but it has only popped into my head recently with all this new information. Ask away, replied Dumbledore. As we are both aware, the Dark Lord is still alive. Are we certain that Harry Potter is still Harry Potter? Questioned Snape. At the time, the question had seemed rather ridiculous, There was no way that Harry Potter was the Dark Lord reborn. Because it made no sense. Who had been hanging off the back of Quirrell's head? Why would the Dark Lord stop the Dark Lord from returning not once, but twice so far? Greed? Perhaps, but there had to be more to the story than just wanting to be the only Voldemort walking around. It was time to bring Harry in for a talk and a deep scan of his magic, just to make sure that there was nothing amiss going on with the boy. It was his responsibility to make sure that the boy lived up to the prophecy. December 15th, Thursday, Dumbledore welcomed Harry into his office, the boy talking the seat across from him. It hadn't been hard to pick a date to talk to Harry. The day before the dueling tournament was to start seemed like the best time. Harry would be at his peak stress levels, and this would be the best time to take a look at the boy. The scanning wouldn't take more than a couple of minutes, thus. What made this such a good moment to do it as well as check in with his 14-year-old school champion, with the scanning starting the moment that he crossed the threshold of his office. The small silvery orb on his desk was tuned in with Harry's body. It would tell him if he was healthy or not. It was how he put an end to the Dursleys' lack of feeding the boy. The floating spinning top on his desk was also keyed to Harry's magic, tracking the nature of his magic. Dumbledore had to know if there was dark magic being cast. These were the only two devices that he activated. He had recently turned off his silvery globe because it was showing Harry disappearing even when he was in class. "How are you feeling, Harry?" asked Dumbledore. "Little tired," admitted Harry, "but more ready for the dueling than I was for facing the dragon." "Very good," said Dumbledore with a soft grandfatherly smile. "Not planning to bath Miss Delacour in fire, are you?" Harry frowned, his eyebrows scrunching together. "Would that not work?" Dumbledore chuckled as he shook his head. "No, she is a Vila. At best, the fire would put her in a bad mood before she does her best to beat you up and down the stage." Harry nodded. "Thanks for the advice. I will not be using fire against her." "Professor, is there another reason that you've called me in here today?" Dumbledore popped a lemon drop into his mouth. "You are in a rather unique situation, Harry. While I'm looking into how you were entered into the tournament, I also am questioning how you are." Harry's eyes bounced around the room. "I feel like I have to be as prepared for this as people who are years older than me. It feels frustrating, like I'm being set up to fail, but I plan on winning." "You have every right to feel the way that you do, Harry. I'm simply trying to find a way to help you." "I owe it to you to help you out," stated Dumbledore. "Thanks, but I don't even know what I would ask you for," admitted Harry. "I know you can't really help me with the tournament directly, and I don't want you to help me cheat. I want to win this with my own skill and abilities. Taking a shortcut would not make this a real victory. Even if I wasn't supposed to be in this, there is no reason not to give it my all." Dumbledore smiled at Harry's words. "That is a rather wise and mature thought, Harry. I wish more students were as even-minded as you. If there anything that I can do for you, please do not hesitate to ask me." Harry stood up and turned around to leave the office, but he froze and after a moment, turned around back to Dumbledore and asked, "I don't know if this counts as cheating, but I was wondering if you have notes on inscribing runes into or on a clothing." Dumbledore was rather taken back, not because of the question, but rather the fact that Harry had thought to even ask him it. Dumbledore was a rather knowledgeable user of runes. It was made up several of the devices he used to keep track of Harry and make sure that he remains in good health. However, the only people who ever had really seen or experienced his runes woven into his clothing had been his followers in the Order and Voldemort when they had clashed all those years ago. "I am not all that sure of how you know about this type of magical branch of runes, but I do in fact have notes on how to imbue runes on a clothing," said Dumbledore as he stood up and turned around, reaching up to the top shelf of one of his bookcases and pulling out a small tan journal. "I read about it in Isaac's Troll Expedition," admitted Harry. "That is a 7th year's runes translation assignment," noted Dumbledore as he extended the book across the desk and towards Harry. Harry nodded as he blushed slightly. "I have found that runes are much more useful than I ever imagined, so I have thrown myself into the study of them in my free time as much as possible." Dumbledore accepted the answer. There was no sign of Harry lying to him so far. Harry would not be the first young man to show interest in being academia. Dumbledore himself had been a young man who was years ahead of his own peers. "You have a task in less than 24 hours, Harry. Do not stay up till late reviewing those notes," said Dumbledore sternly. "I know, as tempting as it might be, those runes can take up to 24 hours to become permanent. Even if you manage to lay down the array correctly, you would be hard-pressed to get any of them functional by the start of the task." Harry nodded. Don't worry, Professor. I will not be applying them with less than 24 hours before the task. It's not worth the risk. Pleased with the response, Dumbledore watched the boy leave his office with his notes in hand. The boy had been polite, calm, and respectful. He was every bit as Harry as he had been in the past. The only difference was that he looked a little more tired than he had previously. But that was honestly to be expected. The young man was in a stressful and dangerous tournament. Tapping the small orb on his desk, he was pleased to see that the scan of Harry's body was complete, as was the scan of his magic. The orb revealed that Harry was rather healthy. Nothing overly impressive, but he was in relatively good health. Narrowing his eyes, there seemed to have been a malfunction, because according to this reading, Harry was nearly 5 weeks older than he actually was. A day or so older could be expected. He had used the time turner with Hermione at least once to his knowledge. But for him to be this much older, it was clearly more than he had expected. He would have to keep a bit of a closer eye on Harry's age, him being closer to 14 years and 7 months than 14 years old 5 months. He should be was a bit surprising. Putting a pin in that particular issue, he checked on the top. Harry had never used dark magic in the past, but there was always a bit of a lingering taint coming from his scar. There is none. Dumbledore was taken back by this reading. He had noticed the scar on Harry's forehead growing fainter this year, but he had never thought that there would be no dark magic behind the scar anymore. This was troubling. He had assumed that there was something extra behind the scar, perhaps an additional sliver of Tom. But if there was no dark magic residue, then that meant the future he had been preparing for Harry needed to be changed. There was no Horcrux. There was a future that he had to prepare Harry for, one where he was going to live a long, healthy life. The next day, Harry yawned as he stood in the arena. This time it was the Quidditch pitch. There was a translucent dome of magic wrapped around the triangle prong stage. There was 3 extended rectangle platforms that all fed into a large circular triangle. Dumbledore had been right. The runes had taken almost a full 24 hours to imbue into this set of battle robes. Hence why Harry was tired. He was running on close to 4 hours of sleep. But based on the bags around Fleur's eyes, she wasn't faring much better. Victor looked fine, but his back was letting less firm, and his shoulders were slumped ever so slightly. Are you ready to dominate? I need to put the world on notice. Perfect. Remember, the runes can only handle so much magic. We didn't get fair enough into the notes to apply the best version of them. Use them accordingly. Harry let out air through his nose as he mentally nodded. Fleur gave him a small smile, the edges of her lips twitching upwards, and he understood the thought. He gave her a similar twitching smile, one that was almost instantly replaced by a serious look. Crumb's eyes danced between Fleur and Harry, and he scoffed. Try not to team up on me immediately. Don't make it obvious that you two are friendly. Harry is nicer than you, but I take no allies into this duel, spat Fleur. I plan on taking both of you down, by any means possible, admitted Harry. Victor gave a predatory grin. That is what I wanted to hear. We are the best our schools have to offer. Let us act like it. Harry nodded. I mean, Fleur and I are the best, corrected Victor. You are the little boy who cheated. Harry rolled his eyes. Got it. Smack you in the mouth first. Victor spat on the ground in disgust, and Fleur glanced between the 2 male champions, feeling like she was being cut out of this fight before it even began. However, none of them said anything else. It was not worth wasting words. Harry focused on his breathing as the dueling referee from the ICW came up and provided the ground rules. The rules for this duel are quite simple. There is to be no life-threatening spells cast on purpose. No dark magic is to be cast, no fiend fire either. You are allowed to fight until you are unconscious. If you lose your wand, it does not mean the fight is over. Do you 3 agree to this? There was a trio of nods, and the referee said, Okay, everyone on the count of 3, there will be a bang, and the duel will begin. Get into position 1 to 3. Bah! None of them made a move, each one of them eyeing one another, cautiously bouncing their eyes, trying to figure out which of them would make the first move. Hold your ground, Harry. Let the brute make the first move. It will be his first mistake. Victor was indeed the first to break, and he slashed his wand in a circle, sending a tornado of cutting curses out from his body. Harry jabbed his wand, and lightning flew out the end and ripped right through the tornado of spells, before slamming into a dome of magic around Crumb. Crumb gave a blood-thirsty grin as Fleur flicked her wand and banished all of the debris from the cutting curse's back. Crumb. He countered by banishing the debris, while also transfiguring all of it into arrows. Harry could hear the whistle in the air. He twisted his wand and redid the transfiguration into bubbles, and Fleur giggled as she was popped a bubble with her wand, none of the arrows having survived. Victor narrowed his eyes at Harry. Clearly, he was recalculating things he thought of Harry as he saw Harry deal with two rather advanced spells with ease. Harry didn't wait for him to react before using his wand to write out a V and conjuring a trio of giant eagles that immediately attacked Victor. Whirling around to Fleur, Harry blasted a tsunami-like wave at her with a slash of his wand. But she merely smirked as she blasted white feathery flames from the end of her wand that completely overpowered the water. Steam flooded the arena and Harry groaned as his glass fogged up, limiting his vision. He sent a pulse of magic out that pushed the steam away, but just as he regained a hint of sight, he felt a jerking sensation feel his body as a rope around his right ankle ripped him off his feet, and he was suspended in the air by his ankle. He slashed through the line, and as he was falling, a powerful Bombarda curse slammed into his body. The runes imbued into his robes, saving him from a painful crash as he slammed into the warding at the back end of his platform. Coughing as he rolled over onto all fours, Harry slashed his wand before jabbing it into the ground, transfiguring the ground of Victor's platform into ice. The Bulgarian immediately slipped, hitting his head on the ground. Fleur conjured a whip of flames that she slammed down on the downed boy. His roar of pain as the flames lashed him across the torso, the icy floor of his platform melting. Growling as he climbed back up to his feet in a single motion, he cast several Kalashu spells at Fleur. One managed to hit her, and she tried to move to the side, but her shoes had merged with the ground. She threw up a shield just in time as a series of tiny birds erupted from Harry's wand and attacked her. A pitch-black glimmering spell left Crumb's wand and blitzed Fleur's shield, shattering it upon hitting it, and Harry watched as Fleur dropped to the ground to avoid the spell, before she cut through her shoelaces and left the shoes behind. Engorgo Scullis is a rather dark but extremely rare spell. No wonder the referee didn't say anything about it. He probably doesn't know what it does. It's not like he makes the head grow bigger. No, it causes the skull to explode. Oh. Harry narrowed his eyes as he locked them on Crumb. The spell was so overpowered as Harry's anger fueled the spell that it slammed right through Crumb's shield and sent him flipping backwards before he slammed into the warding. Harry felt a stunner almost hit him, but it warped around his body as his magic pulsed inside of his body and slung it back at Fleur, who let out a gasp of surprise before she deflected it with her wand towards Crumb. Flipendo Tria. The spell left Fleur's wand, and the spell ripped up the ground, flinging the debris all around. Harry had to throw up a shield to avoid getting hit by anything. Crumb had a rather different approach as he weaved in and out of the flying debris before he launched several spells at Harry. Harry's shield was already weakening. Thus, the third and fourth spell came through and hit Harry. Harry's runes absorbed the Expelliarmus spell, but they couldn't do anything to the spell that wrapped him in robes. The act of his arms being slammed into his sides caused him to drop his wand. Unable to cast a shield charm without his wand, Harry seemed to be a sitting target, especially when Harry sat down on the ground, closing his eyes as if he was giving up. But no matter what spell Crumb cast, they simply warped and wrapped around Harry, but never hit him. Harry was panting from the effort of sending pulse after pulse of magic out. He was also slowly loosening the binds with each pulse. Crumb thought that he is defenseless, but Harry actually had Crumb right where he wanted him. Gritting his teeth, Crumb stopped targeting Harry, leaving him alone as he turned his full attention over to Fleur, who had used the moment of no attention on her to free her shoes and put them back on. Harry could hear them trading spells, his magic bubbling under his skin as he focused on escaping the robes that wrapped him from his ankles to his shoulders. He heard a yelp from Fleur and opened his eyes to see she was in a similar situation to him as she had gotten overpowered by Crumb, while Harry had been focusing his magic. Do you feel that? The buildup of magic. That is not a light spell. This referee needs to pull Fleur out of the duel or she's going to get hurt. But it didn't happen, and Junior's words came to be true as green Greek flames exploded out of Crumb's wand and slammed right into the face of Fleur, causing Harry to freeze as the sound of her screams sent chills down his skin. His skin covered in goosebumps as he watched as the Vila girl managed to absorb most of the flames with her magical properties. But as she collapsed to the ground, Harry watched in horror as the skin along the right side of her face simply slid off. He felt his stomach lurch and vomit fill his mouth as bubbling bloody blisters popped all along the area that her skin had been, and his green eyes met her single crystal blue one. The other one was gone under the melted-together skin of her eyelids, prior to it rolling into the back of her head as she passed out from the pain. Even then, the referee didn't call the match, and Crumb raised his wand to hit her with another spell when everyone stopped moving as the entire arena grew ice-cold, Crumb's frozen form shivering. Harry scowled as his magic exploded outwards, manifesting in pure wind that shredded the ropes all over his body. He extended his left hand, his wand shot out into his hand before he turned and glared at Crumb, then the referee. "What's the matter with you?" snarled Harry as his magic blanketed the area before crushing Crumb to the ground with pure force. "Call the match." That apparently was what was needed to have the referee do his job, and there was a stop called as medics were summoned to attend to Fleur and her injuries. Madame Maxime was fuming as she arrived down on the arena as the medics finally were taking Fleur off her platform. Dumbledore was giving the referee a rather harsh lashing for not stopping the fight sooner, questioning the dark magic that Crumb had gotten away with. Karkaroff was beside Dumbledore, giving a lackluster and half-hearted defense of his student. "You're going to hurt him, aren't you?" "I should kill him." "No, death would be too kind for him. Public humiliation will have to do." "You're going to embarrass him to the point that people will laugh at him for the rest of his life. You will have him looking so pathetic that the Post wouldn't be able to show it on the front page tomorrow." Harry agreed with Junior, and he walked over to Fleur, who was already bandaged and about to be transported to St. Mungo's. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't worry about it, Fleur. I did what was right," said Harry before they took her away. Before Madame Maxime left back to the judge's table, Harry stopped her by putting his hand on her elbow. She stopped and looked down at him, and any retort she was about to issue out disappeared when she took in who she was stopped by. Instead, her eyes warmed up, and she somberly said, "Thank you for stopping the match. You've done Fleur a great service. I will be following her to the hospital after the fight is finished." Harry bit the inside of his cheek to stop himself from frowning. "Make sure that you have a great view of the fight. Fleur is going to want to see your memory of the rest of it." He didn't say anything else as he turned and returned to the repaired platform, the third prong having been removed, making it a single, long rectangle now. Harry on one end and his victim on the other end, both of them taking their places. "Begin," said the referee. Harry slashed his wand upwards, and the ground exploded in front of Crumb, sending the older boy flying into the air before Harry drove his wand downwards and caused Crumb to be slammed into the ground. Crumb groaned as he rolled back to his feet, banishing as much as the ripped-up ground at Harry, who sent out of a pulse of wind that built a barrier in front of him that stopped everything in its track. Incendio Tria. As the flames left Crumb's wand, Harry growled in disgust before he left his magic, guiding him to suck in as much air as he could before blowing a maelstrom out, his elemental abilities snuffing out the flames. "A fucking elemental wizard," snarled Victor. "Block this with your little wind." Golden feathers shot out of the end of his wand, and Harry spun his wand as a shimmering dome appeared around him to protect him from the feather. It was the right decision as the feathers melted the platform around him, and Harry felt heat wash over his body even inside of the dome. Zlatni Plomutsi na Smrda, golden flames of death. It's a Bulgarian spell. Extremely dark magic, but Crumb wouldn't know it. It's way before his time. But not before mine. I learned it back when I was traveling the world in my youth. I taught it Igor as a sign of faith when he joined my inner circle. Clearly, he's been teaching people my little secrets. He's lucky that I do not have my own body to punish him for this type of action. Harry understood how the spell got its name as he slashed his wand from his left hip up through to his right shoulder, and Crumb tried to shield the monstrous bolt of purple lighting that tore through the golden flames, wiping them out in the process. Crumb's shield had the resistant strength of wet rice paper as the bolt of lightning struck Crumb directly in the chest, causing the young man to spasm as he collapsed to the ground. Flipendo, flipendo, flipendo. Crumb's shaking form was blasted backwards, juggled by the spell that kept sending him crashing into the warding. Innervate. Harry hit Crumb directly in the head with this spell, ensuring that he would not be knocked out anytime soon. Crumb was clearly concussed at this point as he swayed, trying to climb to his feet. He wobbled as he raised his wand at Harry, who batted aside the stunner spell that had managed to be on target, ignoring the other 3 stunners that weren't even close. Orbis. Crumb found his legs locked in place as High Feet was magically stuck to the ground, and he transfigured the rubble behind Harry into a large brown bear. The bear snarled as it moved to swipe at Harry with his massive paw, but Crumb could only watch in horror as Harry didn't even turn around. But the wind around him picked up. That was the only sign of things to come as the wind sliced the bear apart, shredding the transfigured bear back into debris. Tarantaligra. The spell left Harry's wand and hit Crumb in the chest, his legs spasming before breaking right at the knee, causing the boy to fall backwards. His legs spasming still as the spell forced the broken limbs to dance about in what should have been a comical manner. "Do you feel confident that you made the right choice?" snarled Victor as he cast some overpowered healing spell that repaired his legs. "You should learn not to play with your food." Turgio. Crumb's spell hit the entire platform, clearing it of all of the breaks and tears, the debris vanishing as well. The two of them glaring at one another, Crumb took a step forward with a limp. His legs were functioning, but clearly not at their peak conditioning. A yellow beam shot out of his wand, and Harry felt Junior urge him to redirect the spell with magic. He did so, and the spell was too powerful to slingshot back at Crumb, instead escaping his magic's grip and slamming into the warding to his left. That was a modified blood-freezing spell. Harry twisted his wand as he jabbed it. The ground behind Crumb exploded as vines ripped through the platform. But Crumb swirled his wand, flames circling his feet, burning away the vines as fireballs launched themselves at Harry, who shot a much smaller bolt of lightning through the projectile flames and at Crumb. Crumb threw his body to the side, slashing another pitch-black spell at Harry, who banished the spell with a burst of magic. Both of the duelers were panting with effort, and Harry raised his wand to cast a stunner, but felt his body heat up instead as his magic was struggling to keep up with the demands of the battle. "You are at your limits. I guess my age is catching up to me. You should be proud that you lasted this long. You threw around more magic than any other 14-year-old boy ever did. Release the rune?" "Yes." Harry spun his wand around and tapped his battle robes on the center of his chest thrice, and Crumb watched as the pale boy's skin returned closer to normal, his breathing growing less labored. "What did you do?" grumbled Crumb. "All the magic we've been throwing around. I have runes on my robes that absorb magic. Once they are full, or I am empty, they refill me body with the extra energy," answered Harry, as he cast a massively overpowering banishing charm at Crumb, who was flung backwards, sending the older boy slamming into the warding once more. Crumb raised his wand to aim at Harry, but didn't cast a spell as he realized that if he didn't knock Harry out with whatever the next spell he used, he would only be fueling the younger boy's future assault on him. Gritting his teeth, Crumb slightly cast his next spell, Levi Corpus. He frowned as it didn't appear to work on Harry, who smirked in return as Crumb realized too late that the spell had been bounced back as he was ripped off his feet, dangling by the ankle. Brachium, emendo, brachium, emendo, brachium, emendo, brachium, emendo. Harry whipped his wand at all 4 of Crumb's limbs, a large confident grin on his face, as all 4 spells were on target. The spell was unfamiliar to Crumb, but he understood why the boy was happy when each one of them hit their target and his limbs became boneless noodles. "Professor Lockhart taught me this one," said Harry before he used his most overpowered banishing charm of the day to blast Crumb through the warding and into Karkaroff's lap in the judge's booth, causing the referee to call an end to the duel as he summoned Crumb's wand. Harry turned to the equally awestruck and cheering crowd, the masses of both Hogwarts and the French school cheering for him, as the Northern school had scowling looks on their face. He raised his hands in the air victoriously, before taking a deep victory bow, relishing in the moment. He tapped his wand on Crumb's, putting the wand in the middle of a giant ice cube and before casting an anti-melting charm on the ice and banishing the block at Crumb's head. As he climbed down from the platform, he felt himself grow dizzy, but pushed through it. He knew that a 20-hour nap fueled by the time turner was definitely in order after a long day of dueling. Dumbledore popped in next to him in a flash of flames as Fawkes landed on Harry's shoulder, crying out in his ear and providing him a jump-start spark of energy. "You did unbelievably well today, Harry," said Dumbledore. "I try," said Harry before he folded over and vomited all over the ground as his body spasmed. "There it is. I was wondering when you would start to suffer the effects of throwing around too much magic," said Dumbledore. "You broke a promise to me with the runes as well." "I didn't," countered Harry as he wiped his mouth. "I had the runes in place before I got your notes. All you did was confirm what I had done." Dumbledore resisted the urge to frown as his magic told him that Harry was not lying to him. "Very well, Harry," conceded Dumbledore. "You shall be happy to know that Miss Delacour was successfully healed, her skin being regrown." Harry gave a tired smile. "Good. She didn't deserve to be treated like that by Crumb." "Yes. It was most dishonorable the manner in which he was able to use very dark magic," admitted Dumbledore. "He could have killed us if any of those more serious spells had hit us," complained Harry. "Who picked this referee? Who was in charge of that?" "Harry, that is partly why I came to meet you. The referee who was here today was not the real referee," said Dumbledore slowly. "Huh. It seems that this referee who witnessed this match was someone who used polyjuice to shapeshift into the referee and provide a biased edge against you. The actual referee just arrived at the Ministry. His mind wiped of the last 24 hours," explained Dumbledore. Harry felt a bubble of fear inside his chest. "Who is doing this to me, Professor?" Dumbledore looked at him with pity. "I don't know, Harry, but this time there will be no holding back Moody. He's the best person for an investigation. We will find them." Harry shivered as he tried to put it together. "I need to be more vigilante, it seems." "I agree. You need to keep your wits about you," said Dumbledore. "However, I pray that you find the culprit before I do, for I might not be able to hold back as much as you would." Harry felt fear grip his spine as Dumbledore and Fawkes left in a burst of flames, just as they had arrived. "That is why I told you that we want to fight like Dumbledore and not Voldemort." "I see it now." "Good. Now let's get some sleep. We have a lot more training to go over." A/N. Hi. I hope you like this chapter. I wrote all of it today, August 23rd, 2024. Victor Crumb had the potential to be a real menace in the OG story, coming from a school that supposedly promotes the dark arts. Yet we never see a single thing that makes him a real threat. Well, he's going to a fucking problem for Harry and Fleur in this tournament. He might not be a bad person, but that doesn't make him a good person. The pairing is undecided still, but I will admit that I am heavily leaning towards a Fleur/Harry story again. Especially since Harry is going to be physically aging up closer to her age by the time the year ends. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a review or send a PM. As always, please think about joining my Discord, lots of conversations and just overall good vibes in there. Join using invite code 5FW6AXK3. Until next time, Chapter 5. Having won the duel against Crumb, Harry used the time turner in the chamber to go back another 10 hours. He still slept for over a day, his body demanding rest for the sheer amount of magic that he had used. He awoke on Sunday, the day after most of the other students in the castle had left, awoken not by being well rested or anything like that, but rather the sheer coldness of the almost winter air filling the chamber. "Good afternoon. Why do I feel like this?" You are still young. In a decade, that match might have been nothing more than a short warm-up for you. But since you have yet to reach your peak, your body requires rest equal to the effort that you put out. Great. Any way that I can make this not happen again? What if I have another duel with Crumb? Then we will simply put him down faster. You were much too kind to him in the previous duel. There is no reason to allow people such kindness. He casted dangerous magic at you. You will never respond to such attempts on our lives again, with schoolyard spells again. Am I clear? Yes. Good. Now let's go get something to eat. It should be nearly lunchtime. Harry used one of the many exits to the chamber to appear on the third floor, before making his way to Great Hall. The hall was mostly empty, the majority of the students having gone home for the holiday. In fact, all of the students were sitting at the Ravenclaw table fitting on the single table with ease. The 50-something odd students gave him a wave, but none of them said anything as they waited for the food to arrive. Harry's body was shivering, even under his winter robes, his long, fluffy PJs worn under them, and the heating charm that was over his body. I don't think I've seen you this cold since you fought Barty, since before the World Cup incident. I don't know if I will ever be that cold again in my life. This is not ideal, but I will get better once I start eating. That was a rather bad moment. You laid down in the ashes of the clearing that he attempted to kill you in the field where you actually did manage to kill him. I didn't kill him, my magic did. I stand corrected. Good catch, child. Who the fuck makes the food around here? I am starving. Probably the house, elves still. I imagine they're down in the kitchen, waiting for everything to be done or waiting for Dumbledore to give the signal to release the food to the students. You think Dobby is down there / We could check later. Someone is approaching. All of the students had continued to ignore Harry, leaving the boy alone. None of them wanted to cross him after watching him duel, and they knew how moody he could be when he was all bundled up waiting for food. While not on Ron's level of hunger or manners, Harry was rather sarcastic and rude when hungry. Thus, everyone knew not to bother him and had no plans to do so, except for a blonde-haired, blue-eyed young girl with radishes for earrings as she plopped down across from him. H. Harry let loose a large yawn, his body shaking from the force of the yawn. Hi, I don't know your name. The girl didn't bat an eye at the admission. My name is Luna Lovegood. You can call me Looney if you want. Everyone else does. She finished her statement with a wave gesture to the rest of the students sitting at their table, the remaining Ravenclaw students looking slightly scared as she made the damning remark. No, I think I will call you Luna, said Harry, his sleepy feeling leaving him. How can I help you? My father is the owner of the Quibbler. I was hoping to be able to get an interview for the paper, answered Luna. Harry blinked at the straightforward request. It was the first time, excluding the BS that Rita tried to pull on him, that someone actually asked him for an interview. Sure, shrugged Harry. How she spawned the tiny notepad and quill was rather awe-inspiring. The white fedora that had a red ribbon around it that read. Press was adorable too. Okay, first question. How long have you been the best wizard in the castle? Asked Luna, a rather serious look on her face. I like her. Can we keep her? Only if you remember to feed, walk, and take care of her, I promise. I am not the strongest wizard in the castle. Dumbledore is still the most powerful wizard in the world, as well as this castle, answered Harry as the food finally appeared on the table, his plate instantly being loaded up with chicken, potatoes, and everything he could reach around him. Okay, muttered Luna as she wrote down Harry's answer word for word before moving her notepad out of the way of a pitcher of lemonade that zipped across the table into Harry's outstretched hand. And how long have you been a liar about your greatness? Junior didn't have a mouth or nose as far as Harry knew, but the snort he let off inside his mind caused Harry to choke on his first bite of chicken. I cough, excuse me, I try my best, said Harry. Luna nodded as if Harry gave her the most profound answer ever given. And do you plan on becoming minister to lead our country to success, or will you have a hostile takeover as a Dark Lord? Harry stared at her as he felt his head start to throb as a headache came in. But Luna just stared right back at him and repeated her question when a minute of silence passed. I have no plans to be in charge of Magical Britain as minister or as a Dark Lord, answered Harry. Understandable. I had heard Hermione Granger was the real brains behind the operation. Thank you for confirming, said Luna with a large smile. Harry just bit into his chicken leg as he suppressed a smile. So, when does Ronald Weasley master time travel and become Dumbledore? Asked Luna. I think he could pull off the beard, but that's just this journalist's opinion. Harry shrugged as the randomness of her questions was slowly becoming normal to him. Is that something he was working on? Luna shrugged herself. I was hoping you would know. We could ask him, said Harry as he pointed at the red-haired boy munching on a sandwich, sighting down the table, waving at them when he noticed them looking at him. He's just going to deny it, said Luna. Probably, agreed Harry. Besides, who can really master time travel? You mean besides you? Said Luna as she tilted her head, and Harry noticed the odd glasses she was wearing for the first time as they slipped down her nose. Holy Merlin, do you know what this girl is? Nosy and terribly misinformed for a lot of things? No. Do you know what a mage is? I don't know, a really strong witch or wizard. Sometimes I forget how tragically undereducated you still are. Are you going to tell me or just insult me, you prat? Mind your tongue, boy, and of course I'm going to tell you, after I've finished insulting you. A mage is not just a strong witch or wizard as you thought, but rather a witch or wizard who is completely in tune with their magic and the magic that fills the world. And you think this girl is a mage? Of course, those glasses are probably to keep her eyes from being harmed by the things she can really see. If a mage isn't slowly and carefully eased into their abilities, they can sometimes be driven mad by seeing too much too soon. Oh, so she's not crazy? No, she definitely is. She called Hermione the brains of our operation. But she also can see the ripples of time magic on your very being. She's beyond brilliant. It's why she is in Ravenclaw. You know it can be seen as rude to not answer questions, noted Luna. But since this is your first interview, I will forgive you. Thanks, said Harry. I have not mastered time travel. Then why are you covered in blue and brown magic? Asked Luna. You tell me, challenged Harry. Maybe you didn't shower correctly if you aren't time traveling, suggested Luna. I probably do need a shower, admitted Harry. You smell like hard work, said Luna as she wrote down that line. That is going to be the line of the article. Harry Potter smells like hard work. And with that, Luna got up and left, leaving Harry to finish his lunch in peace. As the winter break came and went, Harry continued to have basically double days, but making sure to rest more than his preparation for the next task. It was some kind of puzzle room that would be timed or a race to the finish. His golden egg sat in the bottom of his trunk. Junior had already helped him solve the screeches. The Mermish was not something either of them enjoyed. For Christmas, due to Ron being such a good friend, begging for continued friendship multiple times with several apologizes thrown in, Harry actually gifted the redhead the golden egg. Why, what the bloody hell am I supposed to do with this screechy thing? Asked Ron. Have it sent to someone who can melt it down and give you a bunch of gold, replied Harry as if it was obvious. That thing is like 20 pounds of solid gold. Ron looked at him as if he had gifted him the sun itself as he raced off to gather several owls to assist him in getting the egg to someone who would be able to do so. Harry had received a 6-pack of monstrous chocolate eggs that looked just like a dragon egg from Molly. He was certain that the other ones were to be shared with Ron and Hermione, but he didn't feel like sharing with them. He had also taken to wearing his golden Weasley made sweater over his clothing every day. Ms. Weasley was really talented because the built-in heating runes were absolutely perfect, to the point that Junior even questioned how the Weasleys could be poor if the mother of the family was capable of making this type of quality clothing. Hermione and he had exchanged several books on advanced magical theory. Harry giving her books on transfiguration and charms, and him receiving books on Chinese runes and dueling practices from Greece. Dumbledore had sent him a homemade leather-bound journal that was filled with notes about defensive magic, mostly runes and warding. Sirius had sent him another firebolt to replace the one that the dragon had burned. Remus sent him some pictures of his parents. Harry had tea with Hagrid the morning of Christmas, missing the giant gentleman. The twins did a prank during the Christmas dinner that gave everyone antlers and had them letting out yips like a deer world. Dumbledore's nose was glowing bright red as he looked down at the twins with a fond smile. They are quite the pair of crafters. You think so? Harry, I've never heard of a spell that gives you antlers, let alone a potion that does it. They have managed to create unique pastes, potions, elixirs, and candies time and time again. They're the most talented people, outside of you and Dumbledore, probably in this castle. It is a shame that they are poor, or they would probably be able to further their everything. What if they weren't poor? Oh, do you have a plan that suddenly doesn't make them part of the Weasley family? What if you simply gave them the money they needed to start? You think I should invest in them? Why not? You have the funds, you have the ability to do so. You would not miss 1,000 or even 2,000 galleons. And you'll make it back when you win this tournament. And Harry did just that, approaching the twins to provide them with a magically signed letter, gifting them 1,000 galleons each. They tried to reject it, but Junior provided Harry with the correct words to have them accept it. But they insisted on making him 1/3 of ownership and included their own letter to Gringotts to confirm that Harry was to make 1/3 profit from their business. It was the last week of winter break on the 28th when Harry ran into her, quite literally. He turned the corner, and his nose slammed right into the chin of a girl who was taller than him by almost 3 or 4 inches. Not that he was overly short, but 5'6" at almost 15 years old wasn't exactly tall either. Ouch, whined Harry as he rubbed his nose. Oh, it is you, said Fleur, her voice being soft and velvety, unlike anything he had ever heard before, her hand drifting to her chin. She looked great for a girl who had been burned alive by dark magic less than a full month ago. But Harry could make out the fading grid, like design on her skin that went from her face down to her neck and what little he could see of her collarbone. "How are you?" asked Harry as they started walking once more, Fleur turning around to accompany him back to the top of Gryffindor's tower. "I've been better," admitted Fleur as her hand made its way to her repaired cheek. "I find that the new skin is itchier, is the word. It looks almost healed," noted Harry. "You'll be as good as new in no time." Fleur nodded. The healer said another couple of weeks for the ritual to be complete. "My magic protected me from so much of the fire that I will make a full recovery, but they said there was so much dark magic in the spell that it will still take time." Dumbledore ripped the referee to shreds over that remembered. "Harry, I was very mad too. It was such bullshit that they allowed that to happen. I heard something about the referee not being the correct one or something," said Fleur. "Do you have any idea what that was about?" Harry shook his head. "I don't know much other than that. The wrong person was overseeing the duel." Fleur grit her teeth. "The wrong person walked away from that duel." "I beg to differ," said Harry. "Only I walked away from that duel." Fleur raised an eyebrow. "You won? They didn't show you?" asked Harry. "I told your headmistress to have a good view of the fight to show you later." Fleur shrugged. "If they told me the results of the fight, they did not do so while I was in the state of mind to process it properly." Silence filled their little walk, neither of them really sure of what to say in the aftermath of the gruesome duel. Harry had felt much more victorious post-duel, but upon seeing that Fleur was still dealing with the effects of the duel, clearly mentally and physically, he felt a lot less okay with letting him off the hook without something more physically punishing. "Tell her the truth about what happened." "You sure?" "After Crumb pulled that dirty tactic with the Greek fire, I wanted to, maybe even needed to stop the duel. It felt so wrong to watch you be hit by what should have clearly been an illegal spell. I momentarily unlocked an elemental ability to control wind and escape my binds. Upon making sure that you were okay, I hit Crumb with spells that keep him off balance," said Harry as he licked his lips. "Then I pinned his feet to the ground and used a simple leg dancing spell to force him to break his own legs. I let him get up, then reversed the spell on him, sending him flipping up into the air, suspended by his ankle. I disarmed him and then used a gag spell to remove the bones from his arms and legs, then banished him through the warding into the lap of his headmaster." Fleur hummed in appreciation, but didn't say anything as she listened to Harry recount the duel, her eyes casted in a downward position as she slowly took in what Harry was saying. The floor was not that interesting as she mindlessly continued to look downwards as she finally digested what Harry had said. "So, you can't control wind anymore?" she asked. Harry shook his head. "No, that seemed to be a one-time thing so far. I might be able to do so again in the future with some more practice." Fleur stopped walking beside him, and he turned back to look at her, unsure of whether he should be concerned or not. She was giving him a fairly intense look, but he could not make out the emotion in her eyes or the one on her face. "Is she mad at me? I am knowledgeable about many things: complex magic, ancient runes, magical theory, and concepts. I'm as clueless as you are when it comes to understanding women. I thought you knew everything and were always right. I'm about magic. How would I know anything about girls, Harry? I live inside your head. I have the same experience with females as you do." Harry was going to mentally retort to Junior about how that didn't make any sense, as he didn't know shit about half the things that Junior taught him when Fleur spoke again. "You unlocked a rare magical ability because I got hurt," she whispered, but his ears still picked up the words, and he absent-mindedly nodded in agreement. Harry and Junior will never be able to explain why what happened next happened as it did, but then again, neither of them could ever say they understand the advanced, complex workings of the female mind. Fleur slapped him with enough force to leave a very red mark on his right cheek. But when opened his mouth to ask why she did that, she used the same hand she slapped him with to grab the front of his robes and pull him into a deep, aggressive kiss. The push of her lips on his felt like he was sinking into the most perfect pillow, but his mind couldn't focus on that as he lost all ability to think as the kiss extended on, approaching the 30-second mark before ending. Fleur looked at him with a hint of pride. "I do not need you to stand up for me, Harry, but I do appreciate a man who is capable of having my back if I need it." And with that, she turned around and Harry found his eyes drawn to her swaying hips, and he could hear Fleur laughing as she threw him a final look over her shoulder before disappearing around the corner. What the actual fuck just happened? That is my question, Harry. Chamber? Yeah, we have advanced intent warding to convert to runes. With Durmstrang, Crumb and Karkaroff both were in less than stellar moods at the moment, as they once again rewatched the duel between Harry and Crumb for the countless time, trying to figure out where things went wrong. What do you think? Asked Karkaroff. That he is much more talented than I thought, admitted Crumb. He's more powerful than any other 14-year-old that I've ever seen, added Karkaroff. But what about his technique really stood out too? You, Crumb shrugged. He knew what to dodge, I guess. Karkaroff rolled his eyes. And what does that tell us, Victor? I don't know, replied Crumb. Karkaroff shook his head in disappointment. You're thinking too hard, boy. If he knows what to dodge, what to absorb, what to repel, it means that he knew what each of the spells would do. Crumb frowned, but Hogwarts doesn't teach dark arts, unless things have drastically changed since I came here in my youth. No, they do not, confirmed Karkaroff. However, school isn't the only way to learn things now, is it? Crumb nodded. No, it is not. I should expand myself past the reputation of Hogwarts and do some deeper digging. I would have thought after watching the kid kill a dragon that you would have been taking him seriously, tisk Karkaroff. I thought it was dumb luck, countered Crumb. You do not pull of dark magic that has been forgotten with dumb luck, Victor. You do so with determination and skill, corrected. Karkaroff, I will do better in the future. I am in second in the tournament currently. With 7 more tasks to go, there is plenty of time to catch up to Potter, snarled Crumb. There is always plenty of time to continue to fall behind and be humiliated along the way as well, hissed Karkaroff. Crumb frowned. That was also true. He was behind because he had underestimated the girl in the first round, then the boy in the second round. I need to do some research on the Potter boy, asked Crumb. You should have been doing research from the beginning, dismissed Karkaroff before he turned and left Crumb's cabin on the boat. Defeat. It was something unfamiliar to Crumb. He had always been the most talented at everything. The best duelist in his school during his time, the best flyer in the world, the best seeker in the world. And yet, defeat. Twice in 2 bouts it had found him, latching onto him like a parasite that wanted nothing more than remove success from his grasp, never to be seen from again. He found himself wandering aimless as he left the boat himself and wandered the grounds of Hogwarts. It was too early for dinner, too late for lunch. He didn't wish to ruin his appetite at the moment. The food here was rather agreeable with his stomach. He blinked as his feet had carried him to a familiar place. He found himself looking at the door to the library inside the school. He entered the maze of bookshelves, his eyes seeking something that maybe even he did not fully know that he wanted to find. But when his eyes landed on it, his hand pulled it off the shelf at once. The Secret of Elementals by L.N.T. Longbottom. A book about the lore of elementals was something he couldn't ignore, and he slowly made his way to a table in the corner of the library. He sat down and opened the book, taking in the handwritten words. In the ancient tapestry of magic, there exists a rare and revered branch of witches and wizards known as the elementals. These extraordinary beings, whether witches or wizards, possess a profound connection to the primal forces of nature. Unlike ordinary practitioners of magic, elementals command the very elements themselves: earth, air, fire, and water, capable of bending a single element to their will with effortless grace. Elementals are not just powerful. They're the most feared and revered magic wielders in all the lands. No other sorcerer, mage, or enchantress rivals the raw might that an elemental can summon. Their mastery over nature's primal forces makes them the uncontested rulers of magical domains. Kingdoms rise and fall with their favor, and even the bravest armies tremble at the thought of facing one in battle. Their storms can drown cities, their flames can turn castles to ash, and they can carve mountains or split seas with a single command. The origins of elementals are shrouded in mystery. Their power is said to stem from a primordial pact made with the elemental spirits that govern the natural world. This bond grants them the ability to manipulate these forces with unparalleled precision, shaping landscapes, conjuring storms, and summoning flames as easily as breathing. Elementals are not merely spellcasters. They are conduits of elemental balance, maintaining harmony between the forces they wield and the world around them. Their presence can be felt in the serene calm of a breeze, the fierce blaze of a wildfire, or the steady growth of a verdant forest. Yet their power comes with great responsibility, for the elements are capricious and their wrath can be as devastating as their benevolence. Legends speak of elementals as guardians of ancient secrets, their knowledge and power passed down through generations. They are both revered and feared, their ability to shape reality itself, making them pivotal figures in the ever-unfolding story of magic and the natural world. Wherever they walk, the very fabric of existence bends to their will, solidifying their place as the most powerful beings in all the realms. Crumb flipped through the book, devouring the knowledge inside the book, and before he knew it, there was a cough that caused him to flinch as he looked up. Standing there was a bushy-haired girl, dressed in Hogwarts robes with a symbol of Gryffindor. She looked vaguely like someone he had made a passive mental note about, but he could not recall who she was. "You're going to miss dinner," said the girl in a matter-of-fact tone. Crumb frowned. "What time is it?" "It's nearly 6:15 p.m., replied the girl. Crumb closed the book and slipped it into a pocket of his robes. He would finish it in due time. But the sound of food got his stomach to rumble as he realized how hungry he was. "Don't worry, during the holidays, dinner runs until 7:15 p.m. because of how lazy everyone is," said the girl. "I appreciate you stopping me. I was deep into research mode," said Crumb as he stood up. "Shall we go get some dinner?" The girl blushed, and Crumb realized she was almost half a foot shorter than him. But she was cute in a rather girly way. Everything about her said she was all prim and proper. She was a good girl. Crumb thought that was adorable. Because in a world full of magic, why follow all the rules? "My name is Victor Crumb," said Crumb, attempting to introduce himself to the kind younger girl. "I know who you are. All the boys refuse to shut up about you," replied the girl before she blushed in embarrassment. "Sorry, that was a rather rude thing to say." Crumb let out a chuckle. "No, I like the honesty. I deal with a lot of fangirls and, sadly, a lot of fanboys. It's nice to hear someone tell me the truth." The girl had a small smile, her two big teeth flashing at him. "I know, but it isn't proper comportment." "Comportment?" asked Crumb. "It means behavior," supplied the girl. Crumb nodded. "But who makes those rules that say what is and what isn't proper?" The girl blinked at him. I imagine it's the ministry. And do you trust the ministry to have your best interest at their heart?" Question Crumb, because at Durmstrang we base everything on the ability and power of the individual. If you feel that peace is the most important thing to you, you must work hard to become the most skilled that you can be to issue out peace. The girl bit her lip as her eyebrows burrowed. She was clearly deep in thought as they continued to walk together towards the Great Hall. It took a few minutes before she spoke again. "That type of logic is flawed. The theory of meritocracy overlooks social, economic, and systemic influences on success, challenging the assumption of personal ability as sole determinant," countered the girl. "Just because you know more spells or have better wand work shouldn't really make you in charge of other people." Crumb shook his head. "Not in charge, but rather blessed with what is the word privilege." The girl gave a slow nod before double-checking her understanding. "So the better you are, the more favorable you're treated?" "Correct. Is it the best manner of understanding in the school? We all start off as nothing, bottom feeders. Blood purity, family names, and wealth all mean nothing. You must work to be the best. Nothing is given." The girl's eyes shined as if she loved that idea. "I wish Hogwarts was like that. There is a severe lack of appreciation for academia around here. You wouldn't know the number of times that I've been made fun of for knowing the answer or studying." Crumb frowned. "They make fun of the smart, cute girls here?" The girl blushed again. "I don't think half the school sees me as a girl, to be honest. They all treat me like a source of notes and a secondary teacher." "Even your friends?" asked Crumb as his mind drifted. "They're using her much like they tried to use me when I was younger." "I don't really have all that many friends," admitted the girl. "I had two best friends, but one of them has a nasty jealous streak and isn't the best with dealing with the success of others. The other has slowly pulled away over the last year. He's been different this year." Crumb mentally shook his head. "No worries then. You can study with me in the library after lunch every day if you wish. I find my biggest moments of peace are those in which I do not have a horde of fans around me, but rather when I am lost in my pursuit of something new." The girl gave him a soft smile, big teeth still making an appearance. It was rather cute to see her try to hide them. "Thanks, I would like that," admitted the girl. My name is Hermione Granger, by the way. Crumb extended his hand to her, and when she went to shake his hand, he slipped his hand underneath hers and leaned down to kiss the back of her hand. Miss Granger, the pleasure is all mine to meet you. She turned bright red once more and stammered something that Crumb didn't hear, but as they arrived at the great hall, he opened the door for her, and she slipped inside, shooting glances over her shoulder at him. What a strange yet pleasant girl. With Harry, the third task coming up had him slightly stressed, but that stress could also be the massive days he was having at this point. Twist your wand, not your wrist, then do the slash. Harry quickly made the adjustment and smirked as the orange bolt of magic ripped through the boulder he was practicing on. Very good, but I believe the time for practice is over, Harry. The task is in 3 days, we must rest. Really? Couldn't we just use the time turner to get some extra rest the day before? No, I must remind you that you are a growing boy. For you to continue to pile on this number of hours every day, it's not good for you or your body. You must rest. Okay, so what would you like for me to do in the meantime? You have been neglecting your friends to hide away in this chamber and practice magic. Perhaps it wouldn't hurt to be social. Harry agreed and left the chamber before making his way up to the common room, where he entered through the portrait hole and found himself walking in on a big argument. He is Harry's competition, spat Ron. He is just a friend, countered Hermione. Harry groaned, and when both of them took a step forward, he flared his magic throughout the room, and that brought both of them to their knees. Everyone looked at him as he slowly parted the rest of the students, and upon arriving at his friends, he waved his wand to put a cone of silence around the three of them. What is going on here? Asked Harry before he quickly added, one at a time. Hermione is hanging out with Victor Crumb, said Ron, his tone full of anger. We're just friends. You don't even come up, said Hermione, tears bubbling up in her eyes. I know, replied Harry. Both of them looked at him as if he had grown a tail. You know? Yes, Ron. Yes, Hermione, I know. I go to the library too. I've seen them there a couple times in the last week or so, but it's not that serious, Ron. Hermione doesn't know what my plan for the tasks are, and she doesn't know everything that I know. She can't give him any information that he can use against me. Now, Hermione, I am trusting you not to trick by this guy and to maintain our friendship over whatever this is, said Harry in a junior-guided mini-speech. Hermione nodded. I would never betray you, Harry. Good. Already better than a jealous Ron, joked Harry, causing his red-haired friend to pout and mutter. Not that jealous, mate. Pulling his magic back into his body, Harry released them from their pinned positions on the ground. Now kiss and make up. Ron turned a shade of red that made Gryffindor proud, and Hermione looked away as her cheeks turned rosy as well. They might just like each other. Oh, is that so? Yeah. We'll find a way to lock them in a broom closet soon. Agreed. Not literally, guys, but maybe let's not argue about things that don't matter, suggested Harry. Now, if you forgive me, I must rest. The next day, Harry didn't really do much either. Just long naps that were only stopped by mealtimes. He tried to hang out in the common room, but everyone was slightly skittish around him due to the display of magic from the previous day. The day before the tournament, there was an announcement of a Valentine's Day ball, to make up for the canceled Yule Ball due to all the members of the Triwizard Tournament not being able to participate. Harry was very taken back by the idea of a ball. He had known that the rich, wealthy purebloods threw them for celebrations on the rare occasion, but he had never once expected the school to throw one. He was also more surprised by the fact that there had been a Yule Ball that had been canceled. Perhaps Junior was right that he needed to ease up on the time turner. The funnier part was that even though Harry had been completely unprepared for a ball, Mrs. Weasley had been all over it as he had a pair of dress robes in his trunk inside of a magical bag that kept it from wrinkling. He would have to send her an owl with a thank you for the thoughtfulness, and maybe a follow-up letter asking why she hated Ron, because whatever his set of robes were, they were clearly selected to embarrass the boy. How do I find a date? You look around for a young woman inside the school that you find a mixture of attractive, smart, not annoying, and not going to let a moment like this go to her ego. Then you ask her best friend to help you get her alone. Then you ask her. Does that work? Because that seems really simple. Your experience may vary. Is that a manner of saying that I might get rejected? All I am saying is that I would never get rejected by anyone that I asked to a ball. Who should I ask? You should ask your bushy-haired friend. She is a suitable partner for you to take to a ball, and if it goes poorly, you can cross her off all lists of potential future mates. Harry blushed at the thought of him and Hermione having a 3-bedroom home, a pair of kids, with her cat roaming the house looking for a place to nap. But after lunch, he intercepted her on the way to the library. "Hermione, wait up. I want to ask you something," called out Harry. Hermione stopped and looked at him. "Is it important?" "I have a standing appointment after lunch." "It could be deemed important. Depends on the person and the outcome," said Harry, parroting Jr. "Notes aren't really that important," scoffed Hermione. "You rarely bother to show up for class anymore, but I guess you can have the charm notes." Harry put his hand up. "No, this isn't about notes, Hermione. I wanted to ask you to the Valentine's Day ball." Hermione had turned to dig through her book bag, but she froze upon hearing that what Harry wanted to actually ask her. I'll really go to sked by some O'Neill Cincinnati," stammered Hermione. "Huh?" asked Harry. "I already got asked by someone else," and said yes repeated. Hermione, as she took a deep breath. "Sorry, but while you didn't realize I was a girl, other guys have." Harry frowned, but repeated what Junior whispered in the back of his mind. "I always thought you were a girl, Hermione. I just also know that Ron has a big crush on you, and didn't want to get in the way of that if I could help myself." Hermione's twisted into a look that neither Harry nor Junior could understand the meaning of. "I appreciate that, Harry, but Ron doesn't really do it for me, as the girls in my dorm would say. He doesn't take himself seriously enough for me to take him seriously. Maybe one day that might change, but for now, let's just pretend that you didn't say anything to me." She pushed past him, and Harry watched her make her way towards the library. "Okay, I guess he likes her more than she likes him. Small miscalculation on my end, but I will openly admit to never being the best at reading the romantic chemistry between other people." Backup plan? Ask Fleur and get rejected? Possibly in a public and embarrassing manner. Use your Gryffindor courage, brat. Also, she already kissed you, so she has to like you at least a little. Bloody hell. I got nothing to lose, just our pride. Harry didn't go for his normal post-lunch but pre-dinner nap, instead choosing to go over his runes notes of the task the next day. He was outside in the admittedly cold January air, carving runes into a small disc of wood. The wind blew past him, and he shivered under his robes, but that just made him speed up. "Harry, what are you doing out here?" called out a familiar French accent. "Just working on some runes," replied Harry as he waved over Fleur. "Are you insane?" "It's freezing out here," she gasped as she got closer. "You need to get back inside, come on." "Just one more moment," said Harry before he finished the last rune, and the disc of wood glowed with magic before a small bubble of warding exploded from it, and Fleur hissed as the magic washed over her. "What did you do?" she asked as she looked around them. Harry smiled and handed the disc to her as it finished activating, and the bubble of warding around them heated the air up, replacing the bitter coldness of the Scottish January with the pleasant warmth of a France July. "Mon Dieu, c'est parfait," whispered Fleur as she stopped shivering and a pretty smile graced her face. "This reminds me of a trip to the beach on summer break from when I was younger. I figured that our cold hellscape didn't really agree with you, or any of the other visitors," admitted Harry. "I believe you would say that the weather is tragically British." Fleur giggled, and Harry swallowed hard at the sound of it. "You did not stand in the cold for a giggle, Harry. You know what to do." "This is a brilliant set of runes, Harry," commented Fleur as she inspected the runes, her magic washing over them with a gentleness that Harry had never once felt in his magic, but it also felt more natural than his magic normally felt. "I made that for you," continued Harry. "Oh, did you now?" questioned Fleur as she closed her eyes and basked in the French warmth. "I did not get you anything. That is rather rude of me. But to be fair, I didn't know that we're giving each other gifts." Harry gave a soft smile in reply. "You didn't have to. It was a rather spur-of-the-moment thing to make for you. Although it would have been terrible if I had missed you coming in for dinner." They both laughed at his subpar joke, but then Harry felt the urge from Junior once more, and he mustered up all of his Gryffindor courage. Pointing at the disc, Harry cleared his throat that was slightly too tight and dry at the moment and said, "You should flip it over and see what's on the other side." Fleur opened her eyes, those beautiful crystal blue eyes looking at Harry's emerald green eyes. "You did such a masterful job at making this. You didn't need to add anything else to it." "It is like a slice of paradise brought here," said Fleur as she looked down at the disc, the glowing runes that brought the warmth on one side. She flipped it over, and there was nothing there at first, but when her hand touched it, words started to appear. Harry wished his handwriting was better. Junior would have written it much better than he could have, but the words that appeared were in his sloppy handwriting. "Will you go to the Valentine's Day ball with me?" Fleur read the words and looked at the nervous Harry Potter standing before her. and she felt torn. This was her biggest opponent in the tournament. They even had a task that they would be competing in tomorrow. Yet, he was also a boy who had gifted her a French summer in the middle of a brutal Scottish winter. "Yes, I will go to the ball with you, but you have to promise me that you wouldn't take it easy on me tomorrow," exclaimed Fleur. "I would never disrespect you like that," replied Harry. "Then the answer is yes," said Fleur as she stepped forward and kissed Harry. /n. And here we are, arriving at my third task with the ball never being forgotten. Just moved to make more sense for the story. Yeah, there is no Harry/Hermione in this story. This is going to be a Harry/Fleur story, as with Harry aging faster than the average person, he's going to be more suitable for someone a year or so older. Also, as much as I like Harry x Hermione stories, it really worked better if the Harry is closer to a canon Harry, because then he needs her. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a review or send a PM. As always, please think about joining my Discord, lots of conversations and just overall good vibes in there. Join using invite code 5FW6AXK3. Until next time,